And I hope we all enjoy those sessions. Today we are having 3 more sessions based on the same theme. First session will be facilitated by Dr. Ramji Timalsina, the chair of CETRAP, on the title Pandemic and Postmodernism, What Lies Beneath the Combination. His time will be 45 minutes. Thereafter, Dr. Gunaraj will put forward his reflection on Dr. Timalsina's presentation, and obviously we will have 10 minutes QA session, question answer session for the after the reflection. After that, Mr. Gunaraj Nepal will give his presentation on the title Nurturing Ecological Sensitivity, Strategies for the Thinking Classroom. On his presentation, Madam Usha Kiran Wagle will put forward her reflections briefly. That follows the QA session. And finally, we'll have a panel discussion on pandemic and patterns of pain in literature, which will be moderated by well-known critic and poet and assistant professor, Mr. Mahesh Poudyal. He is with us now. And yes, it is our great pleasure to have with us our guru and mentor, Professor Dr. Abhi Subedi. He will be attending the panel today with Mahesh Poudyal, sir. Eminent poet Manu Manjil also will be there in the panel discussion. Dr. Archana Thapa and Dr. Mallika Shakya also will be joining the panel discussion with Mahesh, sir. I would like to acknowledge with due respect all the speakers, presenters, and panelists once again in this virtual conference. Now, not taking much time, I would like to move on to the main attraction of the program that we are anxiously waiting for. For the first presentation, Dr. Ramji.
Yes, sir. Just a minute.
Yes, sir.
Welcome speech to our Regmi sir, please.
Oh, Regmi sir. All right, sir. All right. Thank you for reminding. Thank you.
Okay. Then I'll go to the presentation.
You are so kind, sir, for reminding me. I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Balkumar Regmi, who is the chairman of Pravidi Maitri Shikshak Samaj Thapa. Province number 1, and he is very kind to us because he help us providing this app, I mean a Zoom forum, because we did not have that larger capacity of Zoom. Then we are searching for that, and he very kindly help us, and then we are together here with 500 participants capacity Zoom. So I express my gratitude, very deep gratitude to him. And Balkumar sir, are you listening there to us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. And may I request you for here, I mean, come to the spotlight with few words, sir, for welcoming all the participants and everyone here.
Thank you, Ramdal sir. Sampurna सरहरुमा नमस्कार. यहाँ मैले देखिरहेछु धेरै टाढाबाट सरहरुमा जोडिनु भएको छ. यो अवसर मलाई थोरै केही बोल्ने अवसर दिनुभएकोमा अर्गनाइजर साथीहरु सम्पूर्णमा म आभार व्यक्त गर्छु. म मेरो परिचयबाट सुरु गर्छु. म बालकुमार रेग्मी, अहिले म दमकबाट हो, दमक झापा, हिमालय माविको म कम्प्युटर शिक्षक र हाल चाहिँ म सामाजिक विकास मन्त्रालय प्रदेश नम्बर 1 को आईसीटी विज्ञको रूपमा काजमा म आईसीटी सम्बन्धीको कार्यक्रम मन्त्रालयले गरेको कार्यक्रमहरुको अनुगमन र सहजीकरणमा कार्यरत छु. र साथीहरुलाई म के अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु भने हाम्रो प्रदेश नम्बर 1 मा पनि प्रविधिलाई अगाडि बढाउनको लागि विभिन्न सरकारको प्रदेश सरकार, विभिन्न मन्त्रालय, विशेष गरेर सामाजिक विकास मन्त्रालय जसले शिक्षा पनि हेर्ने गर्छ, यसबाट पनि हामीले धेरै अगाडि प्रविधिलाई अगाडि बढाउने प्रयास भइरहेको छ. यहाँ धेरै बौद्धिक वर्गहरुको जमात छ, यहाँहरुले चाहिँ त्यसलाई साथ दिएर अगाडि बढ्नु हुनेछ भन्ने कुरा पनि मैले विशेष अनुरोध गर्न चाहे. र म चाहिँ एउटा प्रविधि मैत्री शिक्षक समाज भन्ने संस्थाको प्रदेशको एउटा संयोजक अध्यक्षको नाताले पनि मेरो साथीहरु यहाँ धेरै हुनुहुन्छ. मैले चिनेको साथीहरु आदरणीय चेतना सर, हाम्रो मेरो प्रिय मित्र मोरङ संयोजक, त्यस्तै गरेर धर्मेन्द्र सरलाई देख्दैछु म यहाँ, देवराज सर, सम्पूर्ण सरहरु यहाँ हुनुहुन्छ. उहाँहरु आदरणीय व्यक्तित्वहरु हुनुहुन्छ. र विशेष गरेर म के अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु यहाँहरुलाई भने हामी जुन प्रोफेसनमा लागेका मान्छेहरु छौं, यो प्रोफेसनमा लागेका मान्छेहरु जुनसुकै खालको आपद अथवा विपदमा पनि सुतेर बस्दैनौं भन्ने यो उदाहरण यहाँहरुले प्रस्तुत गरिरहनु भएको छ. यो विषम परिस्थितिमा हामी अगाडि कसरी बढ्ने, हामी कसरी चाहिँ प्रविधिलाई प्रयोग गरेर पनि अगाडि बढ्न सक्छौं भन्ने यहाँहरूको जुन यो पहल छ विशेष गरेर यो अर्गनाइजर टिम रामजी सर हामीसँग अलिकति चिन्जान नभएको मात्रै रहेछ, उहाँ नजिकको मान्छे हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँलाई म विशेष धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु र सम्पूर्ण साथीहरूलाई धन्यवाद दिँदै यहाँहरूको यो विशेष कार्यक्रममा मलाई पनि केही कुराहरू मेरो परिचय राख्ने मौका दिनुभएकोमा म धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु। यहाँहरूको यो कार्यक्रममा हामी प्रविधिको मान्छे भएको कारणले गर्दा धेरै भाषण भूषण त्यति मन पनि पर्दैन र मलाई त्यति आउँदैन पनि भाषण गर्न, र सम्पूर्ण साथीहरूको चाहिँ यो जुन एउटा प्लेटफर्म यहाँ क्रिएट गरेर यहाँहरूले चाहिँ मलाई पनि एउटा अवसर प्रदान गर्नुभयो, सहयोग गर्ने पनि र यहाँहरूसँग परिचित हुने पनि, यसमा म विशेष धन्यवाद दिँदै हामी प्रविधि मैत्री बनाउँ, प्रविधिको साथले अघि बढौँ, किनभने अब हाम्रो 21st सेन्चुरी यो कम्प्युटर एरा भन्छ, यसमा चाहिँ हामीले प्रविधिको प्रयोग गरेनौँ भने हामी पछि पर्छौँ र सम्पूर्ण हामी त छँदैछौँ, अरू साथीहरूलाई पनि बनाउँ, आफ्नो विद्यालयलाई बनाउँ, आफ्नो कलेजलाई बनाउँ। अहिलेको एजमा हाम्रो यो क्रिटिसाइज गर्ने पनि, जसरी हामीले अनलाइनमा कार्यक्रमहरू गरिरहँदाखेरि केही साथीहरूले क्रिटिसाइज पनि गरिरहनु भएको छ, त्यसलाई हामी कसरी चिर्न सक्छौँ त्यसको पनि छलफल होस्। म चाहिँ के भन्न चाहन्छु भने कुनै पनि कुराको सुरुवाती, राम्रो कुराको सुरुवाती 100%बाट हुँदैन। आदरणीय बौद्धिक वर्गज्यूहरू हुनुहुन्छ, त्यसको सुरुवाती भनेको सानो पर्सेन्टबाटै हुन्छ र त्यो विकसित हुँदै गएर पछि 100% पुग्ने हो। यदि हामी एउटा इक्जाम्पल म के दिन चाहन्छु भने प्रविधिबाट यो सकिँदैन, यो हुने खानेका लागि हो, यो चाहिँ अलिकति माथिल्लो तहका लागि हो भनेर कुरा भइरहेको अवस्थामा अब यही कुराले पनि हामीले अगाडि गऱ्यौँ भने बिस्तारै बिस्तारै सबैमा पहुँच पुग्न सक्छ। जसरी अहिले हामी यहाँ 200 जना जति जोडिसकेका छौँ, त्यसरी नै अब यो कुराहरू चाहिँ हाम्रो विद्यार्थीहरूमा पनि पुर्याउने प्रयास गरौँ भन्ने कुराहरू राख्दै यहाँहरूलाई फेरि पुनः विशेष धन्यवाद दिँदै यो कार्यक्रम पूर्ण सफलताको मेरो प्रविधि मैत्री शिक्षक समाजको तर्फबाट, मेरो व्यक्तिगत तर्फबाट र यो सिङ्गो प्रदेशको तर्फबाट यहाँहरूलाई विशेष शुभकामना व्यक्त गर्दै म यहाँहरूसँग बिदा चाहन्छु। हस्, धन्यवाद, सम्पूर्णमा नमस्कार।
Thank you very much, Balkumar sir. You are so kind, and we are pleased to hearing your beautiful remarks and words. Now we are moving on to the main session of today's program. So I would like to, move on to the main attraction of the program. For the first presentation, Dr. Ramji Timalsina is invited to the spotlight. But before he starts, I would like to request Mrs. Usha Keshi to introduce the presenter. Over to you, Usha ma'am. Are you listening to us? Usha ma'am? Usha Keshi ma'am, are you getting to us?
Let's unmute her.
Yeah.
Umesh sir.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I'm audible now, yes, sir.
Okay. You may go on, ma'am. I have already announced.
Okay. Thank you, Ram sir. Good morning to all the distinguished personalities over here. It's my honor to introduce the first speaker of today's webinar, my inspiring and motivating guru, Dr. Ramji Timalsina. Dr. Ramji Timalsina is a researcher of poetry and diaspora and lecturer of English in Tribhuvan University, Nepal. He has earned his PhD on exploration into the use of rasa in diasporic Nepali poetry. He is the chair of CETRAP Nepal. He has conducted a number of programs as a facilitator on research and writing. Dr. Ramji Timalsina has published 5 books and more than 4 dozen research articles in each of the English and Nepali languages. He currently works as an editor-in-chief, executive editor, and editor of different literary and academic journals. He has been taking part in national and international conferences on language, literature, and diaspora. He is currently working on the transnational approach to Nepali diaspora and its literature. His latest book is Nepalese Diaspora and its Literature, Emotion and Expression, published from Lambert Academic Publishing, Germany. Thank you. Over to you, my guru, Ramji sir.
Thank you, Usha madam, for your kind words. Good morning, everybody. I'm honored to be with you. Professor Dr. Govinda Bahadur Tumbahangsa, Professor Kedar Prasad Poudyal, CETRAP patron, and many of my friends, seniors, and the participants. a warm welcome to you in my session. The title is Pandemic and Postmodernism. It was a fascinating title for me. Once our program concept designer, Gunaraj Nepal asked me to present on this topic. As we are connecting humanity, pandemic, and ecology in our this webinar, okay, I like the topic and I took it because he wanted me to do it. Once I had the topic, I had some research on this and a few readings I made. Before that, I'll tell you what I am going to do today. Today, my focus of presentation is on connecting pandemic and postmodernism, concept of play in postmodernism, pandemic and power play, dismantling the hierarchy, and what's ahead now. These are the 5 areas I'm talking in 40 minutes. Okay, I was just telling a few readings I was doing, some interesting readings for me I was doing during the preparation of this presentation. A few titles I want to show you what I read, and that made me even sure, oh, how pandemic is really connected with postmodernism. One of the titles was The Coronavirus and the Right-Wing Postmodernism. Oh, interesting for me because it was virus and postmodernism. Again, that right-wing postmodernism written by John Horgan, published in March 9, 2020. Oh, it fascinated me how right-wing and left-wing postmodernism works with coronavirus. It is interesting for me. Similarly, coronavirus pandemic, a postmodern condition. It is the next article published in international journal by Binabheni Ramji. Oh, it is nice. How it is a postmodern condition this virus one is. Similarly, how to communicate in a postmodern pandemic was the next article I happened to read by Michelle J. Coren. Similarly, the first postmodern pandemic was the next article I read. And the next one, the postmodern epidemic. Once I went through these titles and I came to know, yes, my topic is really connected with postmodernism and pandemic is connected with postmodernism. Once I went for further readings, studies, I found these other interesting topics that shape our thought pattern as a postmodernist, and they're connected with our idea of a pandemic and postmodernism. Like the virus, the virtues of the virus. Look at the virus is so bad for us. Some people think this is a virtuous virus. Interesting for me. Look at the way to look at the condition. Similarly, the next one, a much too human virus. Every human being is terrified from the virus, and someone thinks it is a much too human virus. Interesting for me. Similarly, the pandemic is a portal. This is probably the most famous article in South Asia written by Arundhati Roya, published April 3, right? And it gave us a new way, new portal to look at this pandemic. And similarly, the next famous article, The World After Coronavirus. It was written by famous intellectual and writer of this time, Yuval Noah Harari. When I went through these readings, some of them and many others, I was confident enough. Yes, the topic I have been taking, I am presenting is a really very thought-provoking topic. So I loved my topic in the beginning. Then now I want to talk in short about structuralism and modernism versus deconstructed and gone to the phase of post-structuralism and postmodernism. I'll just talk about a few things about this so that it can set the tone for my presentation. Okay, structuralism and modernism. Modernist thinkings are structuralist thinkings, and post-structuralism and postmodernism are created. Once structuralism and modernism they are connected, but once they are deconstructed. Once structuralism is deconstructed, there is the creation of post-structuralism. Once modernism is deconstructed, there is the creation of postmodernism. So from this angle, we have to see this connection between structuralism and modernism versus or developed into post-structuralism and post-modernism. Okay, let's see an example, a common example, and let's see this idea of structuralism and post-structuralism as well as modernism and postmodernism, of how this concept of modernism and postmodernism they're prevalent in our thoughts and in our social practices. I want to just present one example. Let's see our family, structure of our family, traditional family. Okay, we know generally in a patriarchal society, father is the head of the society. He is the controller of the whole family. Okay, then after father, there is the position of the mother in the society, in the family. Similarly, after mother, there comes the son. Only after son, there is the daughter. This is the common family hierarchy. Similarly, only after daughter, there is the place of daughter-in-law in any family. And only after daughter-in-law, we can find the position of son-in-law, who is connected with the daughter. And then their grandchildren. But look, let's see. First, the grandchildren from the son side, they get the primacy. Only there follows the position of the grandchildren from the daughter's line. This is the common family hierarchy, common structure, not only of family, structure of thought about our family. Okay, this is a structuralist combination of our common families in these days. Let's see. Once this structure is deconstructed, there's a scissor. That scissor will cut all the links, all the structural, these backbones of our structural thought and others. The scissor, it cuts. How? Let's see. Once the construction is applied, it cuts all the connections. Once these connections are cut, now there is no connection. Every element in the family, every element in the things are there free. Once they are free, what happens? Once they are free, things come into a play. We have the famous term play by Derrida. Play starts here. Once there is no connection, every element is free. That freedom creates movement, actions of these elements. And what happens? Let's see how these elements come into play. Let's see. Now they are playing. New combinations are being made. They are moving. They have left their previous position. Structure is broken. Then they don't know where they would reach. They only use their power to establish the new position. So look at this movement, in the family hierarchy, family connection. Let's see at last, where do these elements reach? See, probably the new structure is created, but this is again without connection, right? This is not permanent structure, new combination. Daughter, mother, son-in-law in one place, father and grandson make the next combination, daughter-in-law, somewhere on the top, like this. Any type of new combinations are created once the element come into the play. This is Derrida's concept of play. And here starts postmodernism, right? And then, hierarchy on the eraser. The hierarchy is on the eraser. Doesn't mean that it is finished. It is reconstructed, but it is robbed and re-robbed, reconstructed and robbed once more. Right? That's why once it is in the play, the hierarchy eliminated. Some force dismantles the hierarchy. There is some force there, and that dismantling brings things into the play. And then, according to the issue, any element may come in union with any other. I'll show an example. As per the issue, the same elements make different functions, different groups, and they have some discourse. Discourse means play of the power. They do it. So for the next issue, again, they have the next combination, next power play. It is called postmodernist power play. For example, let's see. If there is a problem between son and daughter in a family, such as divorce case. How do family members, family force, exercise the power? Let's see. In traditional structuralist society, who decide the divorce? It is the father or the family head decides. You will separate or you'll be together. Father, son and daughter-in-law, they will follow it. If in case of talak, husband says talak and talak and talak, it's gone. This is the traditional way of deciding the divorce. But once that structure, that hierarchy is dismantled, what happens? Now there are different forces are combined. They are met. See, daughter-in-law she has to fight against the next combination. Son, father, mother, daughter, they make one combination and they fight against daughter-in-law. And daughter-in-law has to fight against them. Look at this, these elements. Now they come into discourse, into play. But poor children, they are undecided. They have the next block. They have the next block. And what they want? They want to reunite or keep the union of the parents together. It's how, in case of divorce, the same family members are divided. And the connection between them, dialogue between them, the power play between them is what we call play in deconstruction. It's where the postmodernist relations start. Let's see the next example. If this is family property, does the same combination continue? No, this is the next issue. Because, see, traditionally, who decide? Family property, right and other, is father. Family head decides, yes, you get this land, you get that land, that house is yours. Father says, everybody is silent. But in deconstruction mode, no, that doesn't work. Because hierarchy is already, scissored, already cut out. Father, mother, and daughter may have one combination, and son, daughter-in-law, and children may have other combination. Because they have the new dialogue. They have the new discourse. They have the new power play. And this opposition works, and according to the amount of the power and exercise, they will be decided. So I simply mean, all these things, in postmodernism, there are elements are united, reunited, broken. No permanent hierarchy, no permanent structure works. Issue-wise, condition-wise, things are different. And my point is, there is some force, some scissor that cuts out all the traditional connections. Once the connections are cut out, yes, now things come into the play. Now let's connect this idea of postmodernist play with pandemic. Let's see how. Pandemic is a force. COVID-19 pandemic is a force, is a scissor. This is a scissor. It has cut out many traditional connections. And force against the establishment. In my word, this pandemic is a corona koinchi. The koinchi you can see on the slide. Corona koinchi. Pandemic is a corona koinchi. How does it work? It is a force to dismantle the earlier power plan, the anthropocentric power plan. We talked yesterday. Sanjeev sir gave a good discussion on this idea. Man at the center and was free to exploit the nature for their benefit in the traditional structure. But now, man's happiness was believed to rest on their capability to use the resources and materials. It was the concept previously. For this, man created cities, villages, culture, politics, and so many other institutions. Man made for their happiness. But COVID-19 created question against this, our structured thought, this established thought. And the question is, are they enough to make man happy? If we are happy, if we are powerful, we are capital M, M-A-N, man. But are we capital M, uppercase M now? Or we are already lowered into powerless stuff? Powerless man we are. Small case man we have already turned ourselves into. The situation has changed into this. So this COVID-19 pandemic is a corona kainchi that have dismantled, cut out all the traditional bound these connections and traditional, concepts. Okay, this currency works. This corona currency works. Okay, let's see how does it work. One more example. Let's say this. Man was at the top of the hierarchy in our thought. Still it may be. Culture man created. Cities we make, institutions we make, villages we make, and we put nature always at the lowest rung of the ladder in our great chain of beings, right? And once this corona currency works, what it does, it cuts all these connections, all these structures, and as a result, what happens? The result is that now there is no some power that connects the hierarchy, that keeps the hierarchy intact. And what happens? Now, these elements, at present, these elements are in the play. They are in the play. They are going ahead continuously and playing. There are many questions. Questions also are in the play. Questions, answers, established things, all are in the play. The play of, the postmodernist play we are experiencing now at this moment. So I think this is the time we are experiencing the postmodernist play because of corona currency. And after the play, what happens? Nothing. The next play. Play continues. Play continues. We should not say that one play is enough and the next structure is made. No, it's made for some time. That is very temporary structure, and that goes on changing once again. And once the power plant into the play, the new combinations go on being made. These combinations face new questions. Again, they face new questions, right? For example, let's see. Okay, now we are having the discourse. Okay, nature is to be valued. We should live with the nature. Cities are bad for us. Okay, we created bad places called cities. This is the discourse going around the world at the moment. But let's see. Let's think once the question. My question is, can we move back to nature now? Can we leave the houses we are living in? Okay, it's not so easy to go back. Okay, so look at, though we think, our thinkings also are on the question. They are again on the eraser. Okay, so do we need to find a new balance where we are? Do we need to find a new balance, or we have to just go for one idea? Nature, nature, nature. Cities out, cities out. Living in the 5-story house, we say, let's move to nature. This is itself the question, okay? And there are many questions, okay, for us like this. So these questions lead to new possibilities, new discourse, new dialogue, and new combinations. Yes, here starts the possibility of new idea, new creation after pandemic. It's what I believe. Okay, then play starts. Result of the play? Yes. What do we have now? We have confusion now. The common result of the play of the idea. Postmodernism always takes to confusion. Why? And those confusions are the mothers of multiple possibilities. So we celebrate confusion in postmodernism, right? And we celebrate, okay, different aspects, unseen aspects in postmodernism. So who is more powerful now? Man or nature? We may say nature now, but let's see. Human beings are finding the medicine against coronavirus. Who is more powerful now? Let's see this way. There is no final answer, only a play. Only a play, right? And now we are in this state with corona pandemic. Corona crazy has taken us to this condition. Okay, and few elements in the play. During the pandemic, I have seen. Okay, pandemic is a major force now. We are sure, a major force. It has attacked the world, attacked the people around the world. Then there are passages. Passages are closed. All passages are closed. We can't come out of our houses. I don't come to my gate of the house. I didn't come for 20 days continuously last time. But still some people are in the passage. Passagelessness again brought them to the passage. We see the people moving in hunger and so many things. So passage is the next force. Policies are there, government's policies. They are in the play. Poverty is there, a big red. Similarly, politics do all with this. When politics and all these things come into play, what happens? We are getting pain. Good for Mahesh and other poets, Manu, Manjil and other poets, because this condition has given space for poetry. Look at space for poetry. These are the elements, some elements, there are many other, okay, which are in the play now around us. Let's see how they are combined, recombined, and how they come into the play. See, once total human force is used to fight the pandemic, we are doing this. What happened? What is the combination? Pandemic is therefore our enemy. And politics, policy, poetry, poverty, passage, people, we are using all these things against pandemic. We want to, okay, win it. But pandemic also is fighting against it. This is the opposition, two pole. That's why we fight against this. The result, we get pain. The fight has created pain. Nowadays, we are painful. Yes, pains are sometimes the source of creativity also. They're the next aspect. This is the structure we can see now. But let's see. Once a nation is ready to fight pandemic and poverty at the same time, for example, last time, Pakistani Prime Minister, he said, now only fighting pandemic is not enough. We should fight pandemic and poverty together, he said. At that time, what the combination of these elements? Let's see. Pandemic and poverty are the enemy now. They are the enemy. For example, in Pakistan, many other places, Pakistan Prime Minister said that way. Politics, policy, poetry, passage, fight against pandemic and poetry at the same time, poverty at the same time, but this weaker combination because one powerful element from this block has shifted to the enemy block, the block of pandemic now. So look at this new combination can be there once we think of it differently. My point is that it is how, and the result is pain, not only pain. The pain greater than the previous pain. The pain I showed in the previous slide was less powerful than this pain I'm showing here because now the enemies are more powerful than they used to be. This is my point. It's how things, concept, ideas, condition, they come into play. And according to our need and our decisions, they different plays, different combinations are made there. Okay, now all the ideas are in the play. We have seen nothing is finally established. Nothing can be finally established. Not only each, nothing can be finally established. It's what postmodernism says. It is true. True throughout human history, I claim. And then basically old ideas are questioned and the new ideas have entered into the play. It's not that new ideas have established and old are gone. No, old still are there. They have entered into the play, right? Then each combination is made for some time and for the next time, new combinations are formed. It goes on. Let's see our human history. Every time it is there. My point is that throughout human history, we can study the whole human history from the postmodernist lens. It's so powerful, critical, philosophical angle. We can read everything from postmodernist angle. Okay, such new combinations go on being created and being questioned at the same time. This process goes on. This is postmodernist angle to look at life, thinking, and the world. Okay, if so, we have put things into question. What are questions now? Grand narratives of this age, they are under question. Because postmodernism always wants to deconstruct this. Means after deconstruction of this grand narrative, postmodernism begins. Now Corona Krinchi has questioned this grand narrative of this age. How? Capitalism, one product world, questioned. Globalization, questioned now. Liberal democracy, questioned now. USA the superpower, questioned now. Religion, questioned now. Male leadership, question now. Education system, question now. And my friends, finally, most of us are teachers. Teachers' identity is question now. Our identity is question now. Let me show a few things how. I don't have much time, just 15 minutes left, I know. Ramsa. Okay, yes, so question positions. For example, capitalism. An economic system is question. Is it able to manage the world economy now? Neither yes nor no questioned. What happens? The play will decide. We can't predict now. Anything may happen. Capitalist forces are running after toilet paper. Let's see. So such a force managing the whole world, controlling the world, are now running after toilet papers. Look at their power. Question the difficulties. And big corporate house is unable even to pay the salary of their workers. Let's leave their benefits and profit and all. This is how these things have come under question. Globalization. We said globalization is the real power. It's the real type of globalization we talked about last 20 years and 30 years around. Isn't it the cause of this unprecedented human suffering? If there were no plane, train, would we be suffering in Nepal now? How would the coronavirus travel to Nepal by plane, by train? Look at this. This has brought not good type things for us. So work as an agent of spreading coronavirus, globalization. Well, under question, this is not now plane is the enemy. It has posted a suicide goal against itself. This globalization posted a goal, but what a goal? Suicide goal. Now this goal questions itself. It's under power, under threat. Itself is under threat because of its power. Look at what happens about the established powers. Established powers are questioned this way. This is the point. Postmodernist angle finds in the current situation. Next, let's see liberal democracy. Is freedom a curse? This new question has been generated. The USA, the UK, the Russia, look at their condition now. And see, is control society a need of the day? Look at North Korea, China. What is the question now? Is liberal democracy good thing? Is it boon or curse? We may say it is a curse. Question. It's not that. This is already the curse. It's the new question against it has arisen. And the US is a superpower. It's a superpower now. Snatching the PPE that the next nation has prepared to purchase from China. Superpower is like a thief now. It just goes and snatches the things. So weak. Snatching other things is so weak. It has done unable to lead the virus control campaign. Look at unable to pay attention to the economic recovery of post-COVID world. And let's see the next one. What about the religion? I was very much happy to listen to Imran Khan, the Pakistani Prime Minister, last week. When they were ending their lockdown in the nation, his around 40-minute long speech I listened to, and he said that. He said that now we have to wage jihad. He's a Muslim. Jihad against whom? Not against religion. Jihad against the virus. Look at. Jihad against the virus. So in this jihad against the virus, who is the guard? Now there are new guards in our world. There is no Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. If there is any, that's healthcare workers. They are our gods now. Others can't help us. Where is the place of prayer? No temple, mosque, church, monastery, hospital is the place of prayer for us now. Similarly, who is the Pope? WH is the Pope now. It says speaks for the benefit of every human being every day. It is the Pope now. The old religious, old masters, religious masters, they have been already under question, dismantled. And what is the religious war? It is the war against the virus. It's not the war against Hinduism, Buddhism, against Islam, Christianity, all this. No, war against the virus is our common religious war now. The meaning of religion is already changed. All religion is already under question. So I'm just quoting the same what Imran Khan said. It is a new religion now. How Corona has dismantled all religious structures, established a new religious connection. That's the next example of postmodernist play at the moment. Male leadership already questioned. Many articles, status in Facebook also, many of friends, National International, I read what they say. Why Germany and New Zealand could manage the effect better than other countries? They have the question. And they say, because there are women leaders here. Interesting case. Not universal case, but very interesting. Look at the argument. New question against male leadership started. And the next time, Trump and the rest, what they are doing? They're creating a storm out of COVID-19, and they themselves are lost in the same storm. Look at Trump and other leaders' condition, even our leaders' condition. Okay, create the storm and lost inside this, don't know their future. How can they know about people's future? So it's how, this is the next angle. I don't mean that male leadership is finished. Female is the only one. If I say only female can lead the world, again, I'm creating a structuralist perspective, modernist perspective. That's not postmodernist one. We should not think that way. To make our mind free, thinking free, we must think from postmodernist angle. So things come into play, into question, under erasure. Okay, education system, I know, I don't need to say. You know it, all of you are from this one. But I have one question about teacher's identity. What is our identity? I don't explain, you know it. But I have one question. Generally, we think we teachers are as a discipliner. We make our children, our students stay in discipline, learn well, and go ahead. But my friends, where are our sticks these days? What are our sticks? We are in the schools, we are at homes. And where is our position as a teacher, as a discipliner? Question. I don't mean in there, it's question. My point is, that is how Corona pandemic has brought many elements in our life into play. And finally, it has raised a question against all many establishments. These are a few examples only. That's why my final note is play. Value of the local and the national has increased because the central and universal is not capable of even saving us. The next one, changes in our common value systems. A few I have given examples. The other you have, okay, you know. And similarly, each old identity is masked, to say. New is still to appear. So we see these days, mask and border are the major symbols of the time. Mask your identity, mask your condition, hide yourself, and create the border. I don't mean Nepal-India border here. Look at, even in how family members, there is a border. We must stay at the distance. 6 feet among the strangers and 3 feet among the family members. Interesting. Sometimes so interesting. How can husband and wife maintain this 3 feet distance forever? Oh, I am worried about this. You must be worried about this. Look at this. So mask and border has become the major symbol of the day. And these are under play. Prevalence of the subjective realities in place of objective facts. Subjectives. Okay, because we feel what we feel now is more important than what is the reality outside. Our feelings are at the center. Our ideas are at the center at the present. And we have to leave ourselves, continue our life, and go ahead. Things like that. And my point again, Corona pandemic is a force. I believe it has taken Derrida's deconstruction to a new height. Derrida must be happy in the heaven now because this pandemic has taken his deconstruction to the new height. This pandemic, this Corona crisis is next force to dismantle old establishment. And all establishment are questioned once more. But doesn't mean that it is questioned once more. Now only this questioning things will go ahead. And our progress, human progress, depends upon how we can question and bring the new element into the play of the old establishment and create the new power politics, or you can say power play. This is how, I would like to connect pandemic and postmodernism. You listen to me. Thank you all. Thank you all. I am very indebted to you for your this very passionate listening. Thank you. Ramsir, I have done with.
So thank you very much, Ramji sir, for your very beautiful presentation. Thank you for taking the time to speak to our intellectual audience. We feel that your ideas and perspectives on pandemic and postmodernism were really insightful and logical. We are truly fascinated by your beautiful presentation. Please accept our sincere appreciation and gratitude. Now is the time to move ahead. So without delay, because we are time bound, so I would like to request Dr. Achyut Raj Patel to put forward his reflections on Dr. Timalsina's discourse. Yeah, thereafter, we are going to have very short question answer session. Okay, and then over to you, Dr. Achyut Raj Patel.
Thank you, host. Can you listen me?
Yes,
sure,
sir. Yeah, we are getting well.
Okay, respected chairperson, my professors, all respected personalities over here. First of all, I'm not much talking about Dr. Timalsina's today's presentation. It has been highly researched, and what he has brought here among us is that Derrida's very difficult concept of play or deconstruction. He has brought in our family, in our society, and the hierarchy, the structure of our family has been deconstructed so well. And within very, I think with very easy type of example, with very simple type of example, we have understood what is play, what is deconstruction, and how pandemics is making our condition. So thank you, Timalsina, that I have got here the opportunity to talk about and reflect about your presentation. Not commenting much on his presentation, I would like to share my experiences, some more experiences. Most of the things, most of the issues already Dr. Timalsina has discussed about, and he has widely approached the themes, issues related to deconstruction and pandemics, how we can combine these two things. However, I like to share some more experiences by starting with one anecdote. I would like to share one short narrative. Once a student, after a bachelor party, a young boy after a bachelor party, drinking heavily comes out. And it was a foggy evening and he just lost his way. And he just finds one person walking in front. And the person's image was blurred because of fog. He comes near and asks him the question, I wonder where I am. I wonder where I am, he asked the question. And the man who has been in front of that young boy happens to be the teacher of the young boy. And he just asks another question, do you know who I am? So look at here, in this way, I wonder where I am and do you know who I am? These two questions, now these two questions reflect our position. And it shows that we are displaced now, our identity is lost. And the loss of identity and the thought of displacement, these are the major themes of postmodernism. And we have lost our identity, teachers have lost our identity, so we are just trying to find out our identity again in the virtual classes. And because we have the fear that, okay, we could have been lost or we would have been lost. And what gives birth as a result is the uncertainty. Now the world is uncertain. And the world is uncertain because already we have been in postmodern era and there was uncertainty in the postmodern era. And because of this pandemics, we have been feeling more uncertainty about the future, about our established morality, science, identity, or religion, or the truth. What Nietzsche says about the death of God happens to be true now. All the doors of temples have been now closed for us. God himself is in isolation. This is a very interesting fact. And what's happening is now truth is an illusion. It is just a type of, a host of metaphors only. So what Lyotard says about, this belief in universal idea or an incredulity towards the meta-narrative. Now, that happens to be true. Now, we cannot believe in universal idea. We cannot believe in global thing. We cannot believe in science because we are lost. We are lost in this pandemic world and no medicine for this pandemic is still, or this virus is still, has been found by the science. So science has failed today. God has failed today. Our social bond has been already disrupted. So this is the wall of coronavirus. So what's happening now is that we are directionless. We have lost our direction. And this pandemic has also lost, pandemic's direction is also not predicted, because it starts somewhere and reaches around the world. And what happens as a result is the local thing becomes global and global thing becomes local. Like from Wuhan, that coronavirus starts, and after that it reaches to the very modern and high society, or let's say developed countries like European world and the USA or America. And what is interesting is that now the virus from Wuhan becomes global and again returns to the local area. Like it touches the people, or it just comes to the world, mainly the major cities or metropolitan cities and the cities where people of high society live. And gradually, again, it enters into the world of nature or the villages. In this way, the local thing becomes global. And again, that global pandemic or the virus comes into the local area. It is very interesting. And the same thing happens in the postmodernism. Post highlights the small things, the local things, the multiculturalism, the narratives around us. Just what is happening today is now Jyoti Kumari, a minor girl of 15 years, she becomes global. And she becomes global when Ivanka Trump tweets about her, how Jyoti Kumari has cycled, she has done cycling of around 1,200 kilometers, just carrying her father behind. Look at here, that short narrative, the simple narrative, the narrative of local area becomes global now, and it becomes global when Donald Trump's daughter tweets about that girl. So, and look at here, we are also now the local people of Viratnagar or Iterary. Now we are becoming global. People around, scholars around the world, intellectuals around the world, from America or Europe, now they have joined here. And we, the local people, are being global. And those global people who are living in the high, let's say, society, or let's say the developed society, now they are coming to us and they are listening us. So it's possible in postmodern world, and it is only possible because of the pandemics. It's very interesting. Mainly, I like to correlate simulation in postmodernism, as Jean Baudrillard says, and mutation process of virus. In simulation, what happens is that, in fact, the reality changes into illusion. We just live in the hyper real world. We cannot say now what thing is real. The real is displaced by another real thing. And the mutation of virus also shows the same thing. Because of the mutation of virus, and mainly I want to just quote one news that was published on 21st May in 2020 in the the news. And in the news, it is said that the coronavirus in India is diverging from the Wuhan strain. It means that coronavirus is changing its form or structure. And now that real virus, what started from Wuhan, now changing into another real virus. It is mutation. And how that process develops, now that is the scientific, or let's say that is the area of researchers in medical science. We cannot go on in depth about that. But what is interesting is that that mutation of virus is very similar to what Jean Baudrillard says about simulation. In simulation, what we find is that reality changes into an illusion, because there are several realities, and which one is real, we cannot say. However, it did not used to happen in the pre-modern world. In the pre-modern world, generally, we just read, or we just got knowledge that in pre-modern world, what people saw, that was the reality. What people saw around, that was reality. So image could reflect the world, image could reflect the idea. At that period, sign and let's say signifier and signified, they had a bond. Sign was very strong. But in industrialization, or because of industrialization, that bond has been shaken a bit, How is strong? Because of the faith of people in industrialization and modern world. What happened is that truth, or let's say reality, did not vanish. It did not vanish. It continued in the modern world. And it continued because my thought is it continued because of type of rules, or let's say government's strict law, or maybe because of the critics that continued. People had faith. But in postmodern era in which we are living now these bonds have already been shaken. There is no bond at all. Now reality is just floating and changing into another reality. And that's happening in postmodern world. And we see that the same in coronavirus. So it is very interesting. In this world, now we find people lost in uncertainty, and now television, film, magazines, or internet, now they have been very powerful nowadays. Therefore, the narratives about coronavirus or narratives about COVID-19, if you look at in depth news about them, there is also a type of play, rather a type of simulation. And how it is so? Because what government says about coronavirus, the effect of coronavirus is one thing. And what comes in electronic media or mainstream media is another thing. Generally, mainstream media criticizes government's idea and ideology. And what is in social media is, again, another thing. In Facebook and Twitter nowadays, news is broken. Now, electronic media and print media, they do not break. They do not break any news today because news is broken in social media. So what to believe? People are confused now. And it's because of the simulation of reality in postmodern era. And especially that happens to be very true in
Ramsa, are you looking at the time?
Yeah, we are running out
also.
of time. Sorry for interruption, sir. Dr. Achyut.
Okay, and lastly, I like to just conclude that, yes, the world will be more uncertain in the future, and the pandemic, after the pandemics, yes, the world will be humanity-centric, but not human-centric. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Ramsal, can you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Now we are moving on to question answer session. And I have many times repeated that we are time bound. So my special apology to all the participants here that, we are cutting the time short so that we can conclude the sessions later on in time. So now may I request participants over here, if you have any questions, drop the question in the chat box or raise your hand. And I would like to request Mr. Gunaraj Nepal to lead the question answer session. Over to you, Gunaraj sir.
Okay, thank you, Ram sir. I do not see any question in the chat box. Okay. I might have missed, but I have a question.
Okay, you are welcome, sir.
All right. So first of all, thank you, Ramji sir, for your wonderful presentation, and thank you for your mention that I was the one to give you a title. What an honor it was. Okay. You argued that Corona has dismantled many old establishments. True, you justified well. But don't you think the other side of the coin, Corona has also united, globalized us with a deeper realization that we share the same planet. What happens in a small place in Wuhan, in China, can affect, lock people, and in fact kill them. So let us see the two dynamics of the the discourse. Pandemic is an epitome of play, very wonderfully presented, but cannot be taken as a unified force that has brought down all people to one single realization that we share the same planet. Could you please?
You know, come to the central idea of this presentation and all, because all of us know why Gunaraj sir has this idea. because he must have some imagination what the presenter should be doing once he was creating this topic. Fine, I agree with you, and my presentation also indicates to that direction. This postmodern play, at present Corona Kainchi, that does not only cut out, that does not only dismantle and rupture the combinations, traditional one. Once things are ruptured, they are not ruptured, they are not destroyed. They are but the new play, new combination. And if we can use that, it always will be the better combination. And yes, once Corona Kainchi worked, we are together. Otherwise, these 300 people together in a Zoom, we never imagined we would not have done by now. That's why you are right. But again, the main point is that once the structure is destroyed, deconstructed, this is not destruction really. This is the play and possibility for the new combination. We are going for that. Gunaraj sir.
Hello.
Okay, I have a few questions. Okay,
I have a question.
Thank you, Ramji sir.
We are coming to the participants, please. Just wait a while.
Some participants seem to have sent some messages privately. So I think they are somewhere in the chat box. So I may not find it appropriately. So, Sagar Parajuli sir, are you there?
Yes, Poudyal sir is raising the hand for question.
Okay, fine.
Dr. Ramji, thank you and congratulations for a very wonderful and thought-provoking session. That was indeed incredible and intellectual. I have a query. This is not a question, but this should also concern you. When we are talking about decentralization of value system at personal level, and thanks to postmodernism, which we always celebrate, we are happy to say many value systems have been dismantled. But at the core of postmodernism and modernism, there is something called power. Don't you think the individual has become so very powerless, and everything is concentrated on the what government says, what WHO says, what the centralized authority says? So doesn't it mean the central authority is becoming more and more powerful, and we are becoming like mere spectators? What the government announces and we have to follow. So we are more becoming mere followers, and the center becoming more and more powerful. Now, is not that against the very spirit of postmodernism?
Thank you, Mahesh. It is a very beautifully put idea about postmodernism. Here's where again my argument lies. Because once the center, the old structure, the state, WHO, they are the old structure. Yes, to some extent they have the power, they will control us. But we'll dismantle, we'll slip away from their border, go out of their border and create the new paradigms for our creativity. That's what we are doing now. That's why every element is free to play. It comes to play and it creates its own blocks to fight against those blocks which attack us. So
thank you, Dr. Ramji. We shall be waiting for that day. We'll wait and see.
Hello.
Ramji sir.
Hello.
Now many questions are likely to come. So I would like to go with Govinda Bahadur Tumbang sir. Could you please put your question?
Umesh ji,
Govind sir, please go ahead. You are muted.
Yes, sir, we are getting you. Yeah.
Okay. Then, I am very happy because you gave me an opportunity to get myself introduced to you. And, I thank Ramji because I have heard that Ramji is a very intelligent person and very laborious one. He has, in fact, proved it by presenting his research-based, talk here. But, I am an old person, just educated in old education era. So I don't know much about this postmodernism, this deconstruction. But, from hearing top to bottom, I became very disappointed. Why? because, you know, Ramji seems to have said that traditional society has a structure. It was structure based. That's why everything was running in a systematic order. Our society members were just like thousands of millions of stars in the sky. They were rotating in their own axis, and there was no collision between them or among them, you see. So it was the structure. But after the coming of this, you know, postmodernism, or whatever you say, deconstructionist age, now this, you know, power equation, this structure has completely changed. What is happening? And the thing which has bound all the structures, elements of structure, gone. So now they are rotating around, and there is no center. There is no power center anywhere. And there is no, you know, there is no permanency in power. Now it is rotating, and sometimes they are colliding with each other. We are living in such a situation. And it happened previously in the Victorian age also. At that time, science was questioning the matter of religion, and religion was not in a position to answer all the questions, you see. But at the same time, science was not also able to answer all the questions posed by religion. So at that time, you know, poets, Victorian poets became very unhappy, you see, and they were in confusion, and the society was at start. Well, in the same way now, our Ramji says that, you know, whatever you try, you see, you cannot. Now, confusion. Huh? Oh, what is happening? Why noise? And society, you see, pandemic. Today, you know, pandemic has become a challenge, and we human beings have become one. Polarization is that way. But tomorrow, when this coronavirus is controlled, then again another power equation will come up. And in such a way, my dears, you don't expect permanence, happiness, peace in the world. He seems to be suggesting like this. Yesterday, Professor, Upreti said, suggested, you are also a poet, Ramji. So now if the society is not good, if the current society is not good, then you have to create a society, ideal society of your own, and you have to weigh out. You see, you simply cannot leave the readers in confusion, in limbo.
Okay,
remember
thank you.
that.
Thank you, Govinda sir. Sorry for interruption.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I am honored to be questioned by the first province head of province number 1 of Nepal. Thank you, Govinda sir. He's my senior colleague. He was my senior colleague in Mahindra campus last time. Okay, I'm very happy to have two things from you. One, you questioned and you answered. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Ramji, please.
Excuse me, Ramji, sir.
Okay.
I would like to.
I've got a question. Can I ask?
I would like to ask. Hello.
Bimal Srivastav?
Yes.
Yes, please, come on. Very short and brief question, sir.
Okay. I would be very much short.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you, sir. My question, okay, no, without, let's say, rounding about, my question.
So we are not listening.
Discourse is connected to. Hello? Are you listening?
Now,
hello?
yes. Please, now.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, my question is, according to Michel Foucault, discourse is connected to power. And then people who are in hegemony, they create power to rule the, let's say, underprivileged people. Here, my question is, who is in hegemonic group? The pandemic or the people who are creating discourse related to pandemic? who is the hegemonic group? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. It's an interesting question for me because Bimal sir, hegemony is created. And if you look at the world history, human history, every hegemony is questioned and that's dismantled in the history. So hegemony doesn't have hegemony forever, right? And now also, yes, man was the hegemonic force before Corona. Now man's hegemony has been questioned and dismantled, and now nature has become hegemonious. More than that, this Corona is hegemony now. We will question it and it will come back to our, again, man's position. Bimalji. Thank you.
Okay, Ramji sir, can I ask a short question, please?
Hello.
Upadji, please.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay, thank you, Ramji sir. Ramji sir, you mentioned that was really interesting, really awesome presentation. The Corona currency deconstructed the whole structure. The traditional hierarchy is in a way dismantled completely. As you said, the capitalist viewpoint, the liberal democracy, all is here to establish institutions are questions. But you know, this deconstruction, is it going to last? I mean, is it going to be same after in a post-pandemic situation? Is that the man with the uppercase aim is going to hold its position back, or will it be still back to the same position? Or this is now we have moved into the completely new phase, new era, everything, I mean, and will be in play as you showed in animation, or does it restore against the position back? That's it. That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pasha. It's a very, very good question. Okay, because as postmodernist concept as well as Derridian play says that things are formed, questioned, deformed, reformed, again questions, and it goes on. I'm sure the position of man will not remain as it is now. Once the pandemic is over, it will be re-established better than it's now, but it won't be established the way it was previously. The new establishment, new form of combination will be there, but that doesn't mean that again that will continue forever. Again, the nature will play, it uses power, and this play, replay, construction, deconstruction, this combination, recombination goes on. So I don't think, Upasya, everything will be as it was in the past. There will be new things that we should be ready for facing and adapting in the new situations. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. May I request only one question now from Dr.
Excuse me.
Smita, ma'am. Yeah, come on, please. And this is the last question because we are short of time.
Excuse me. Hello.
First of all, hello.
Yes, yes, we are getting.
Okay. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Ramji Timalsina for his wonderful presentation, and also I'd like to congratulate Dr. Achyut Kotwal for his very elaborate dimension of his vision. Now, I just like to ask one question to both of you. And I like the answer. I have two questions, and the one question is to Dr. to Dr. Timalsina.
Ma'am, please one question only, ma'am. We are out of. No,
it's that, yeah. But the questions are related. Okay, just please.
Okay, may go on.
Okay, please ask. I'll answer the question.
One person will give the answer. It will be sufficient for me. And the thing is that Dr. Timalsina, you have talked about. First, you have started the presentation of a family like a traditional family of India and Nepal, and but what about that many Western family that does not follow this tradition? Number one, this is the thing, and the most important thing that I like to know about that the deconstruction of this, the structuralist thought in the dimension of the subject and the object, that what would you like to talk about that after that the post pandemic period, what would be the subject position of this corona virus? And because both of you have just talked about that the play and the deconstruction you know as the effect, but I like to know about the subject and the object dimensions. How would you interpret it, please?
Okay, thank you, Sushita ma'am. Okay, the family example I have given was just one component, one example only. There are many structures of the family, okay, according to society and civilizations. They are different. That's why Western family have their own structure. We have our own structure. But the question is, everywhere the structure is under question. That's my point, right? Structure can be different, but those structures are questioned, re-questioned, reformed. That's one. About subject-object position, Okay, generally subjectivity, I mean here is not only human subjectivity, it means how we look at the things. The postmodern condition is subjective, not objective, because everything is different for everybody, The corona, I have seen the comment on the comment box, corona is a terror, sir. How can it be interesting? Yes, that's interesting for me. It's a present on postmodernism. Because yes, corona is
post-pandemic period.
It is no. Yes, ma'am.
I mean to say that what after the post-endemic period, sir? This subject-object dimension, because if there is not any the structure, then there would not be that the deconstruction of the structure. So what I want to know about the very position of the subjectivity of this coronavirus after that the post-endemic period.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
That is my question.
And I have already said in my presentation, things cannot be predicted. Things come into play, we have to adapt, look at a play and find our position. That's why if I predict now, I would be modernist, not postmodernist. That's why it's impossible to predict, ma'am. We have to see the play and find our position inside that.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
All. Yeah, we are not going to take more questions.
It's me, Jivan sir.
I'll talk to you later, sir, personally. We have no time. Thank you, sir.
Sorry for
please, just a minute.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes,
Ramji,
sir, yes. Very short, sir.
Yes. Ramji, sir, it's a very wonderful presentation. But my question is that you said that ideas establishment are reformed, restructured, and you said better than this or betterment of this. How can you say that since everything is no fix, no finality? What is the betterment of meaning? Which one? What is the betterment?
Thank you.
Betterment of this, you said that.
I've got a question, Jivan sir. The betterment is also the matter of thinking, your approach, your way to look at the things. If you look at the traditional structuralist point of view, what comes next may be worse. But postmodernist,
that is better than this.
Yeah, that's better if you can think better. Otherwise, not. That's subjective position. That's subjectivity, Jivan sir. If you can think, it's better. If you cannot think, that's worse. So my point is, let's think better.
Very good.
Right? We can make it better.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we need to move ahead now. We need to move ahead now because we're.
Omesa, please unmute.
All right. Unmute yourself. Okay, thank you all the intellectual participants for engaging attempts, for asking questions. Now is the time to move on to next presentation. The presenter is none other than young and rising scholar, Mr. Gunaraj, Nepal. But before he makes his presentation, I request Madam Usha Keshi to introduce the speaker. Over to Usha, ma'am. Usha, ma'am, are you getting us?
Usha, ma'am, can you please? Yes, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ram sir. It's my great honor to introduce the second speaker of today's webinar, the concept designer of this webinar, a dynamic and innovative personality, Mr. Gunaraj Nepal sir. Mr. Gunaraj Nepal is a lecturer of English at Sukuna Multiple Campus Morang and Biswa Adarsha College and Rashtriya Janasahayog College Itahari. He is also the chair of NELTA Morang. He has contributed more than 20 years to the field of teaching. He has facilitated several sessions on ELT for teachers teaching across Province 1. He has presented papers and given plenaries both at the provincial and national conferences of NELTA. Currently, he is an MPhil scholar at Kathmandu University. His research and pedagogical interests include critical thinking, ecological approach to English language teaching, and interdisciplinary studies. Thank you, sir. Over to you, respected Gunaraj sir.
Gunaraj sir.
Sir, please, you can unmute yourself. Thank you. Yes, that seems to be working now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Umesh, please enable my screen sharing as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Is it okay, Gunaraj sir? Is it working? Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
Is it all right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. It's well visible.
Fine, sir. Please go on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Usha madam, for your beautiful words. I'm really humbled for the choice of words for me. Here I start. I start with a mention of my gurus. Dear Professor Govinda Bahadur Tumbahang, Professor Dr. Kedar Prasad Poudyal, Dr. Ramesh Pokhrel, I saw him yesterday. I guess he's there somewhere in our virtual screen. And Dr. Ramji Timalsina. At different periods of my higher education, these four scholars were my gurus. And gurus are always gurus. And what an honor to give a webinar to a forum where four prominent gurus are present. So a great, great welcome to you all. I must not say, I'm a little bit nervous, but the way Ramji sir was being asked questions, a little bit nervous as well. All right, as you can see, my title on the screen, my title is Nurturing Ecological Sensitivity, Strategies for the Thinking Classroom. What I actually mean by this. Please do it. Right. Is it all right, Ramsir?
Yeah, yeah, very well. It's visible.
Okay. So, my first slide has a title, Threshold, a single word. When I say threshold, I mean it to be an entry point, a vantage point that I should start from. So I invite you to take this session as a teacher's response to pandemic. Now, how can teachers respond to this global pandemic is my issue. So what else teachers can do is my issue. You might be wondering why teachers respond. Here are some reasons for you. Those of us who attended this webinar yesterday should remember Professor Sanjeev Upreti, a prominent writer, talked about what writers, poets, playwrights can do to respond to this global pandemic. And what an insightful idea he was sharing with us. He said, these writers, these creative writers can offer an alternative space. It's through their imagination. And he also talked about social justice for the wildlife. I had heard social justice for the people in the margin, but I had never ever heard, the phrase social justice for other animals who share planet with us. And that was a literary writer's perspective. Then those who attended our webinar yesterday must also remember a session by Professor Dr. Kedar Prasad Poudyal, who entertained us how words are finding new location and meanings. And that was a linguist perspective. And, just earlier, couple of minutes ago, we were being enlightened by Dr. Ramji Timalsina, a growing leader and our chair at CETRAP. And he gave us idea how pandemic has dismantled all old establishments. And what a brilliant way to answer the questions from the floor. And that perspective was a philosopher's perspective. Now I'm taking you to what I actually want to tell you or not. Means Sanjeev sir presentations was, a literary writer's response to this global pandemic. Professor Poudyal's response was a linguist's response. And Ramji sir's response was a philosophical response to pandemic. How old discourses, all means grand narratives, are being dismantled and are in a play. Now, what I am trying to present is a teacher's perspective. Now, I think majority of you in this virtual screen are teachers, teacher educators. I'm afraid the kind of ideas that I'm going to present, might fit you or not. So ideas and strategies that, I present here fit better in an ideal situation. So by ideal situation, I mean that, an atmosphere where teachers are very resourceful, very updated, very much positive towards doing something of their own. Or those teachers who do not, build up their classroom around passivity. Those teachers who always look for changes. So please, do not think other way around if the ideas and strategies I suggest may not fit into the situation where I work. And please forgive me, that would be my limitation. And before I begin, I should also share with you, those who attended my session at the NELTA conference of Province 1, that was one very grand conference in our part of the country. There I disseminated the theme of NELTA, TESOL NELTA International Conference, and there I was arguing that, by ecological approach to English language teaching, we mean taking or incorporating total context of teaching, classroom environment, socio-cultural context, available resources in a particular context, and teachers and students as agencies, means what they do or what they are empowered to do in a certain, given context of their time. But this time, Ramji sir was asking me to blend these two. But I decided, to go along without blending, but making you clear that when we go with the phrase ecological approach, or when we go with ecological content, we are in a different position. So in this presentation, I'm going with ecological content. If you love to read more on the area, there is a website that I displayed on the screen. I do not want to go into detail, but I'm treating, whatever ecological or literary text that I present for my discussion in this session, treat ecological content, not as ecological approach. And there are two different concepts, shallow ecology and deep ecology. And my presentation is tilted towards ecological self. Means, ecological wisdom or harmony. When we share the planet, do we have the sensitivity? The kind of sensitivity that we need to have is one creator of this earth planet. And Sanjeev sir was talking about, the birds and telling us, very fascinating, sharing us, a very fascinating comparison of the concept of the beauty between birds and women. Who are beautiful? Birds or women? Who are beautiful? It's all about perspective. So I'm not talking about a lot of content or issues that are given in literary texts that deal with global warming, acid rainfall, pollution, deforestation, and so on. But based on those literary texts, I'm planning to argue, would we really make our students sensitive enough to realize the value of the ecology we are immersed in? That's my, major, stance in this presentation. So my overall session plan. So context is COVID-19 imperative for teachers. It has been customary for people these days, to take COVID-19 as a vantage point, to discuss whatever comes by, Okay, so I have also taken COVID-19 imperative. What does it lie? Means what lies there in COVID-19 text for teachers? I treat COVID-19 as a discourse, as a text. And that insight I got from, our dear Professor Abhi Subedi. I had attended his one session. There he was treating COVID-19 as a discourse, as a text. What's my issue? My issue is how can we better build English classroom, be it a language classroom or literature classroom, around critical thinking and ecological sensitivity. And what would be my some illustrations? I would be very brief in that. Okay, I have taken some very familiar texts as an example how we can deal with these ecological texts that deal with human condition, ecology, and change. And what would be my strategies? There are some I have taken from the book. I will show you, and I mainly focus on ABC phases of the book. So let me begin with, pandemic is a text. What we actually mean by that. So as teachers, there are questions. How do we see the discourses of death, dilemma, or hope around COVID-19? Now you see, when we lost one single individual in our country, that became a celebrity message in a country. Look at the humanity. We were, rushing towards sharing the death of a woman. Look at the mentality that COVID-19 has left us with. So what is our recent perception that we take, as death? Would we imagine America, in fact, New York, can lose 30,000 people in a month? Now, how should death be defined in a capitalist context? And let's think of the dilemma. Scientists are working. They are in fact, fighting for, competing, for finding a medicine. And is there a silver line of hope for us? So means as teachers, because teachers are thinking individuals, they come across many these news media hypes. How are you reflecting on these COVID-19 texts is my question for you. And how do you think these discourses are likely to permeate, get an entry into your work as teachers or teacher educators? You would not say, I'm sure that I'm indifferent to what is happening in the ecology around, and that has nothing to do with the class that I take, whether it is virtual or face-to-face. I don't think so. So we as part of this global pandemic, my question. So how the idea started? Idea started with a recent deeper realization. We all teach, ecological or literary texts, and and the texts that glorify human civilization and progress. But we might have achieved a huge success in science and technology, or even communication. We are still, very powerless, at the feet of nature. Nature is still all powerful, invincible, and capable of bringing all sorts of claims that we have made so far. So what is the very hot tatato message for us? The hot message for is that, nature is all powerful. So when we deal with, text, literary text that has some physical environment, or that has something to deal with some ecological problems, do we go with our student with a similar intensity, with a similar realization? Now the time has come to reflect on the way we deal with our ecological texts in literature. And there are threads of interesting discussion around COVID-19. And Dr. Timalsina's presentation was one of them in that direction, okay? So deaths, discovery, dilemmas, fine, the darker side. But what about brighter skies? What about happy wildlife? Many news on television, YouTube channels are showing that animals and birds out in the sky, out on the road. And there is always a hope. So how do we approach our literary texts that mirror, that picture birds, animals, or when a nature poet sings the glory of nature, or when a nature poet laments, on the loss of an animal. How do we feel? Do we really feel, is my question. And if we do not feel, I don't think we can cultivate that sensitivity in our students. So that's my major issue, nurturing ecological sensitivity. So these days, I am adapting, and we all adapting and adjusting in an online environment. And Guru Karma is the word of Abhi Subedi sir. In a recent article, Ramji sir had extended it to me, and I went through. So this is a Guru Karma we all are doing, okay? So I'm sharing my understanding. My understanding is very limited, I understand it. But, but sharing perspective has always value, as Lohani sir, often reminds us. So I'm reflecting on ecological texts. So once again, squarely, I'm asking you squarely, as teachers, how can we respond to pandemic? Any crisis, presents the opportunity to help us learn, think, and cultivate compassion and increase resilience. In the life of a CETRAP, our organization, this is the first time ever in history we have gone global, I would say, global, international. More than 250 participants, attended. I don't know how many of you are listening to me now. So we are responding. And this is one way of responding to the predicament we all are in. And our response to pandemic as teachers could be to choose strategies that can keep students' mind alive, alert, and active. You might have an argument, there are a lot of ways to respond to students' interest or thinking. I agree with you. But I would also, I'm also planning to come up with some of the ideas that, do not sound that difficult, but we can employ, and we can employ. And pandemic fear is imbricated once again. Imbricated, it's not new. If we go, if you check in our human experience, COVID-19 pandemic is not new. And in film and dramas, I think it's contagion. If you watch this movie, oh my God, how did filmmakers predict? And this is where I find these artists, these literary writers so brilliant. You might have read, Sanjeev Sir's Hangsa, how he gives the entire space to the birds, to hunks, and sends a message of social justice as he was arguing. So how did you feel, those of you who watched Contagion, right? These artists can predict before something happens, right? And then there is a Korean, series as well. Even, Romeo and Juliet. Actually, I should give credit to Professor Aniruddha Thapa sir. I saw his, Facebook post. Those students of literature must remember the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet is built around the problem of plague. They couldn't meet because of the infectiosity or something like that, he wrote. And I checked, I Googled, and I found it. And I thought, why not take it as a mention? Then T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland, very recently I attended one session by Professor Ramnita, Sarda. And she was presenting, post-COVID readings of, T.S. Eliot, Wasteland. And what a fascinating read. The first session of, first session of The Wasteland begins with the April is the cruelest month, dear participants. Those who studied, the wasteland in some, point of your university life. Could you imagine the April, in this, 2020 was the most cruelest month. And, she begins with her discussion from there. I don't have time to share whole idea, but I was just blown away. Look at, so it depends on how we see. Fear is everywhere. So it is up to us, how we deal with, the text prescribed for us and whether it goes or not. Ramji sir made a mention of it. Pandemic is a Portal by Arundhati Roy. She's always a fascinating read, and I don't have time to go to a whole lot of things I have, written here. I just want you to get into the highlights that I have made, These pandemics are gateway from one world to the next world. And it's an opportunity to imagine another world and getting ready to fight for it. Now, what does it imply for teachers if we read this article from teachers' perspective? Could this pandemic for a gateway? We heard some local teachers speak yesterday. They were sharing small local narratives. And I was really happy because, as you have already given a credit to me, that I was the one to design the program for this webinar. And this is small narratives they were sharing with us. Now, and see, those teachers who had no idea of Zoom, and some of us might not even have heard what Zoom actually is, started using Zoom. And, I'm going virtual and coming to you. So see, a departure. So what could be a departure for us as teachers? This portal could be a way. And there is a Paulo Coelho's tweet, famous tweet, from his text, "The winner stands alone." So there he says, save the planet. If we overstep the mark, the planet will erase us from its surface and carry on existing. See, literary writers are always ahead of us. So who do you think are responsible? Biologists alone, or scientists, or politicians, those who make policies? If you remember Anuradha Chaudhary's essay, How Sane Are We? Are politicians, or poets, or writers alone, or activists, or journalists, or educators, teachers like us? Who else are responsible to save the planet? Questions for you. So time to rethink. We come across these ecological problems, as teachers of English literature. In fact, even English language teaching these days includes a lot of text from literature. There is a shift. When we deal with a literary text that has ecological content, of warming, global warming, air pollution, ozone layer, extinction of plant, animals, and birds. So when we see that, there is a question in the middle, the white part of the slide. Don't you think? As urgently as we look at the, speed which toilet rolls are disappearing, nations are desperately snatching ventilators. What comes to your mind when you think of, people fighting for toilet rolls? And the example comes from the United States of America. How do you feel? And don't you think it is, the kind of urgency that we as teachers need to realize while dealing with the texts that have ecological content, have a similar urgency that this global pandemic has extended to us, is it? So, our earth is sick, we all know. Even Sridhar is, wrote the poem, The Gaia. Those who, studied or taught that poem, you remember. So nature is always powerful to fight back. So are we prepared or not mentally? Are we prepared or not with the emotions or thinking that we are required to have in order to address this? The questions. So let's rethink our relationship with nature and other beings. Our being, our belief and values, and the technology and pedagogy and the content. It's mine. So before we get into the actual illustrations or example, let's reflect. Many things changed, time changed. We heard our local teachers, great scholars speak yesterday. Time changed, years changed. In fact, age also changed. Curriculum, syllabus, methodologies, even our colleagues changed. Some colleagues, I could see them ordinary, but these days they are so powerful. When I hear them speak, I just feel jealous. Oh, wonderful. How beautifully they have progressed. People do not remain the same, right? They change. So students change, they are no longer the same. The student we had in the class, Kedar sir better knows. The student he had in the class in those days and the student these days in Kasturi College are not the same. They're different. So policies are changing, parents are changing, society, things of priority changing. How much are we changed is my question. And remember, my question is as a teacher, how much are we changed? How are our attitudes? Do we just take things for things, or do we take things and look into it so that it will have some stuff to share with our students in the classroom? That's the question. So, so here I come into the main section and maybe towards the last major part of the presentation. Dear host, how much time do I have? I think my 15 minutes were overlapped by the the earlier session. So I hope you will favor me. Fine.
Yes,
so
sir,
English
more 10 minutes.
English curriculum. So English curriculum is an interdisciplinary curriculum. You all know it. It has a text from communication, ecology, education, critical thinking, cross-cultural issues, human condition, a lot of things. So how do we deal with environmental or ecological texts, or the texts that deal with ecology, human condition, and change? And an interesting realization is that literary texts are contemporary to the time they were written, and they are always contemporary to the time we live in. See, I was sharing with you the reference of Romeo and Juliet, right? And I was sharing with you the reference of the wasteland, right? So these things, fine. So let us think about some familiar texts. The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. House and Are We by Anuradha Chaudhary. To Long-Term Problems by Mohsin Nisani, or Traveling Through the Dark by William Stafford. And what do these literary texts very frequently remind us? They remind us that our earth is a single geographical unit. It is tighter, it is fuller, and it is more interconnected. And once again, nature is powerful, invisible, and capable of bringing any power down to knees. And it also makes us realize that there is a pain, dislocation, and uncertainty central to our lives. So you see, so you can now imagine what I'm talking about and why this literary text is an example. So time to redefine our relationship with each other, nature, and other things. Time to reflect on what and how we teach in the post-COVID era. So this is a thinking time, I mean. And for most of you, this is a eating time, I know. And some of you are off the camera and might be eating, right? Or some of you might have left. I don't know how many of you are listening to me. But I can understand, okay, for average Nepali family, this is an eating time. Please do it. But if you are listening to me and you have not left our session, it's a thinking time. Let's reflect what, is for us. So the questions is squarely around when we deal with these ecological texts. Do we brainstorm and capitalize our students' knowledge and experience? Do we really do this? Generally, we go out and we present our perspective, or we love to narrate our things. Professors in the humanities talk about narration sickness. I think this is the phrase from Mohsin Nisani. We narrate a lot of things, and we feel that, we enjoy speaking our English, and all students are spellbound. And there was a time I did the same. But as I attended many conferences, as I read many articles, as I continued to experience these days, I thought, no, my students must be allowed to have some space of their own where they can come up with their creative ideas. So do we wait for our students to come up with their opinions? Because when you throw questions at them, most probably they would not come, quickly. Some have language problems, some do not have an obvious understanding, lot of things. You understand your context better. But do we really wait for them to come up with their ideas, no matter in words or in tongues or in their native language, is a question. Do we help our students when they struggle to put their ideas coherently? Sometimes students come up with bizarre ideas. But do we really help them connect those bizarre ideas and allow them to have some sort of feeling that, oh, I also contributed something to the discussion that my teacher had generated in my class? Do we really do that? Here are great scholars from, Tribhuvan University in this virtual screen. And many of my colleagues, right? Whatever questions I have put, myself included, please do not, think of excluding me. I'm very much similar to you. I'm talking about the realization and the deeper realization. Are we, making our student content consumer, or are we also giving space? Because when students remember their teacher, they remember for their thinking. If I have to remember Sanjeev sir, please forgive me why I take his name very frequently, because it is a very hot experience just yesterday. And this hot lava is coming because, what a way of putting several ideas together, right? So it is teachers first, It is teachers who need to know how to blend ideas. If teachers lack connections, if teachers lack associations, if they cannot make their students thinkers, that's obvious. So how do we update ourselves? How do we grow? How do we deal with? Is a question for us. So do we discuss what students can do individually or as society to solve the environmental problems? For literary writers, it's easy. We will give you an alternative space of imagination. What a fancy to listen to. We talk about social justice for other wild animals. Fancy to listen to. And what we as teachers and students can do together, right? Just imagine our students make a poster presentation on pollution and place it somewhere in the public space, or in the in the classroom or outside the classroom. Just a very small trivial example must have some meaningful understanding for us. So do we help them perform and produce their own interpretation, their own, please? Okay. So what do we teach is a question now. What do we teach? Do we connect what happens in our life and nature with what we teach is a question. So when we are asked this question, what do you teach? We would say language, grammar, composition. Or we would also say, I would teach how to think and feel separation from the real and nature. Do we? Or do we also teach how to think about exploitation? Not only exploitation as content, how to think about exploitation or deforestation or degradation or human irrationality. And for your kind mention, I have included learners' attributes by UNESCO 2014. And I have highlighted, they expect today's learners to have a deep knowledge of global issues and cognitive skills to think about those global issues. This is where I would like to focus more on. So there are many reminders. I can go quick. Even secondary English curriculum, very recently, issued, tells us that, we should use critical thinking and creativity of the students. And Kumara Bhativelu, those from, education and, education in general, might have heard, this great scholar. He tells us that we should not treat our learners as empty vessels. And there are many other reminders. I can go quickly, right? And our English curriculum guideline very clearly says that our students are not passive recipient of information to active producers of knowledge. See? So if we boast of, I gave Mallika, I provided them question answer, I provided them summary and I did my job. Of course, we should be doing, I should be doing, but we should put our students into some amount of reflection and thinking. So, there was a time I would give, notes to our students, and there has been more than 7 years. I have left giving any notes in the classroom. The whole 40-45 minutes I use, and I'm a beginner in terms of experience. And I'm deeply humbled for, scholars listening to me. Fine. But these days, I make them, even if they have to get notes, I make them wait for the notes. I do not provide them in their terminal examination, in their class, examinations. I force them to write something of their own. And when they write something creative, I applaud it. Means I appreciate it. So this is where I'm trying to get some transition. It doesn't mean that I'm a great, in doing and I have got all success. No. And even our heritage of words, that is likely to change, from next year, but still one more year is left to teach us. So there in the second unit, mother or the destiny of animal, charged with awareness of the problem, intimate sense of awareness of the problem. The preface says, you can visit, revisit it. Intense awareness of the problem. Do we really try hard to, or for intense awareness is question. So many reminding factors I don't think I have time to talk about, but they tell us that we should deal with abstract and tangible aspect of life with more insight and more understanding. They repeatedly remind us, right? And even our teaching manual, those who have used teaching manual, you can see there, one of the objectives, there are 3 objectives. One objective is open-ended discussion and analytical, thinking skills. So my argument here is, these texts talk about or demand for, very comprehensive, very critical kind of exploration and interpretation. Some sort of, awareness, intense awareness, in fact, for students to realize these global problems that come through these literary texts. But there are not given any specific strategies for them, is my argument. And officer was, giving a tip for us, quick tip, and he's always, a great, scholar for us to listen to. He was telling us, take issue from literature, poem or novel, problematize it, you see, ask essential question around the, problem that you have generated, encourage your students' participation, and lead students to produce interpretations in English. I do think, dear seniors, dear colleagues, dear participants, this is a mantra, see, one single talk can give you the whole message. You don't need, many books to read. You just see, do not, just narrate the content to your students. Take issue and problematize it and build questions around that and lead your students for interpretations. Great. So, what do I mean by strategies for the thinking classroom? There is a reference for you. This is a great, great book, dear colleagues. If you have not, got it yet, I think these days it is available in the internet as well, right? There are a lot of strategies I don't have time to talk about, but they talk about, what, so what, and now what. Means they talk about how can our students find connection between ideas learned for social action in the actual world. If they study pollution, how can they, materialize their concept about pollution in actual action? They talk about it. Brainstorming, you all know it. Opening up students' understanding, queuing up their prior knowledge. And then they talk about shared inquiry approach, leading a deep discussion into a work of literature. Provocative text. You see, I was talking about the, for example, how sane are we? There the writer, mostly throws blame at the policy makers. You can take that issue and build, a lot of rich discussions there. And if you let your students, be free for, for allowing them to have to not be divided between right or wrong kind of dichotomy, then students can offer a lot of insights, even into your understanding. They talk about discussion with cooperative learning techniques. They talk about debates, helping students make claims and debating with reasons and arguments. In fact, there are a lot of strategies, okay? But I don't have time, just so. So, and then how do they think that these strategies should work? They present these three, model, ABC model. Anticipation phase means here students are directed to think and ask questions. Brainstorming, right? Helping students to call up the knowledge they already have, right? This sets up purpose for learning. If you do not allow them to come up with something relevant to their life, then that's a drive. They argue. So anticipation and building knowledge. Now, what do you do there? You build up what is presented by your students or presented by the collaboration between you and your students. So inquire, find out an answer. And then from there, new questions emerge. And this is where we understand. I will present one example, okay? My understanding. And finally, a consolidation. Students reflect on what that knowledge actually means to them and how they can use in their life, see? So these three models, if we adopt in our, classroom, our classroom would be a thinking classroom. Our classroom would be enabled to generate thinking, reasoning, helping students to generate more claims and arguments. And obviously, then making them more sensitive towards the ecology that they live in. So, one example for you. I struggle which one to present as an example. Then I thought, oh, this is where most teachers debate. So I thought traveling through the dark, very familiar text as an example. Now see, anticipation, first page, what could be? These are just possible, I'm sorry. Here are some brilliant scholars and teachers. They might cultivate more ideas into it. But for me, what comes to your mind with the words travel and dark, right? We can just start our discussion around whose habitat is the forest, whose space or time or wilderness is this, or how do you feel when you see the animal crossed over on the road, or the bird, when the bird is hit hard by any vehicle. Building knowledge means why do they, what does, and is that justified? Say if you happen to kill or saw someone kill the bird or animal, see, you build up knowledge around it, right? So this is where the students, find main points, building knowledge and consolidation. Now, this is where students are enabled to summarize the main idea, in fact, interpret the idea and share their opinion. Darkness of forest versus darkness of human mind. The more we move into nature with the vehicles like the car in the poem, the more we move on to wildlife. And you can also, help your students consolidate the idea that, human solutions are confined solution. They happen to kill, think or show mercy for a time, and then they find an easy solution. You can have a charged, discussion around that, and your student even can compose a poem. And my students are...
Gunaraj sir, sorry for interruption.
Yes, sir.
May I request you to conclude soon, within 5 minutes, sir? Our time is just exceeding. Sorry,
excellent.
Sir. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I'm coming to the end. Excellent. So sometimes, I was talking about the last page, consolidation. Your students can write a poem or even an essay, or they can put the, ideas and to actually work in their life. And, a student sent this poem, in my messenger and asked me to read this poem. And what a moment to share it with you, right? I don't have time to go through. There are some, linguistic kinds of errors or other combinations. There are great poets, Mahesh ji, even Manu, Manjil, I don't know whether these great poets are here in our screen. They might be listening or they might be watching it, So, but students do. That's my point. So let us think, how do we teach the wasteland if we are at the university level? How do we teach, intangible kind of things, like death, destruction, peace and hope? How do we teach? Just think. Do we narrate the story, this happens, or how do we teach? Just for discussion. How sane are we? Means in this text, how do we teach insanity, impotence, and radical restructuring the writer talks about? Or in two long-term problems, how do we teach wisdom, compassion, and courage to save our planet or save our critical resources? That's my questions. So teachers, so with these all questions, the point here is that, officer, I was asking a question to officer, sir, we were taught in that environment, and how can you expect this many things to happen from our teachers? And his answer was, I believe and trust teachers. Teachers can do. And I also, feel that, oh yes, teachers can do. So what is COVID-19 imperative for us? Means let us have a fresh vision on how we can inculcate ecological sensitivity in all young learners. It's teachers who can inspire deep questioning and commitment to save our ecosystems. So teachers' perspective matter. I asked this question, Dr. Shraddha, why did you choose such a dark example to present in your discussion session? I asked this question. She was choosing the wasteland to present, and I thought, in this gloomy, pandemic period, why did you choose the wasteland? Means much gloomier. And her answer was that we can better see the light of hope through darkness. From one extreme of darkness or destruction, we can better see the brighter side of the other. What a brilliant reply, I guess. So, and I believe in that. And so final thoughts, this is a concluding slide, and I'm almost done. And here are final thoughts, for you. Pandemic must be a portal, a gateway of change for teachers, as Arundhati Roy reminded us in a different context though. And let us not build our classrooms around student silence, around listening to us and taking notes, because they are thinking individual. And there are classic, statements by Socrates. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. And, I heard Dr. Hari Lamsal, a very great educationist, speak at Relo Nelta program Chitwan a couple of months back. He said, if you think what you teach is the final truth, means content, that's the end of learning. And what a fascinating, allegation. What a fascinating realization, in fact. So here I conclude, and thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. And thank you all of my gurus, colleagues, those who heard me before or those who heard me for the first time. We are always.
Thank you. Thank you, Gunaraj Nepal, sir, for your fascinating logical presentation with lucid word choice and sublime, lofty and tone and tempo. We are really fascinated, and please accept our deep gratitude and thankfulness from our side. Now, I have to say sorry to all the participants, intellectual participants over here, because we are not able to resume two sessions here. That is a reflection and question answer session. I promise we will resume these both sessions after we will have had the panel discussion, because officer, our great mentor and teacher, Dr. Abhi Subedi sir has already come, and poet Manu Manjil and Mahesh Poudyal sir is already there, and other panelists have already been there. I'm not going to introduce from my side, rather our moderator, Mahesh sir will introduce. So before I hand over the spotlight to Mahesh Poudyal, sir. Let me introduce Mahesh, sir, first. Mahesh Poudyal is assistant professor of TU, and he is a renowned poet and critic too. So welcome him, and then I would like to request him to lead the panel discussion ahead, sir. Over to you, Mahesh, sir. Over to you, Mahesh, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ram Dahal. Good morning, all the participants who have.
Good morning and namaskar.
Namaste, Madam Archana, Professor Subedi, and I'm also expecting Dr. Mallika Shakya is here. I believe she is with us. And it was so nice and insightful listening to you all since 7:45 this morning. And we are finally on the verge of starting a new, very intellectual session, pandemics and the patterns of pain in literature. So as panelists, we have 4 eminent scholars of our time, whom not only we in Nepal, but everyone else in the world would love to listen to. They are key persons in different areas of research and intellectual endeavors. I would like to introduce Professor Abhi Subedi. In fact, Professor Subedi doesn't need any introduction. He is a guru, a teacher, a mentor to most of the people present here in this webinar. Professor Subedi hails from Terathum district in East Nepal. I think we all know that. And he is a PhD on pragmatics of poetry from Tribhuvan University, and a postgraduate. He has a post-graduation degree in statistics and applied linguistics from Edinburgh University, UK. And I don't need to introduce his works. His face speaks much more about his works and his confidence and experience than my mere words. Professor Subedi, to my reading, is emblematic of a few things. First, he is not an individual, he is a phenomenon. I call him a phenomenon. And I say this with all due respect, sir, you are a phenomenon. And Professor Subedi has taught one thing to the entire generation, that be critical through a smile. Smile and be critical. This is something we need to learn from Professor Subedi. And he has taught us another thing. Don't complicate a theory, localize it, personalize it. Try to understand theory from your experiences and from your vintage. And that great scholar, that philosopher, Professor Subedi, a warm good morning to you and welcome to our webinar. We have Dr. Mallika Shakya. I want to see whether Shakya is here. Dr. Mallika.
Mallika is there.
I am here. I joined relatively late, but I'm here.
I think you remember me. We had met in Delhi at the behest of SARC Literature Conference.
Absolutely.
So she is in fact a global celebrity, but I don't know whether all of us here are aware of Dr. Shakya. So let me introduce Dr. Shakya. She is an economic anthropologist with a PhD from London School of Education, LSE, the very famous and premier institution of economics and social sciences, and a postdoctoral from Oxford and Pretoria. She works on industrialization, socio-economic embeddedness, and labor. She examined the rise and fall of ready-made garment industry in Nepal between 2001 and 2011, which exposed her to the turbulent national politics rooted in Maoist movement and so many other socio-political and economic development in Nepal. She teaches at South Asian University and she belongs to the Department of Sociology. She has been advisor to so many economic and other political and social establishments, including World Bank and UNICEF. So Dr. Shakya, we are welcome. You are welcome to this wonderful webinar. We have the ever smiling poet, Mr. Manu Manjil here. I want to see Mr. Manu Manjil. Wherever Manu Manjil is there is sunshine. Even at midnight when he comes, there is sunshine. So he's a poet, a lyricist, an editor, a translator, and many, many things. An MA from Tribhuvan University. He has a collection of widely acclaimed poems. His most famous works have been anthologized in 2 books, if I'm not wrong, Andiko Abeg and Lempost Bata Khaseko June. He has been a winner of SARC Festival, SARC Literary Awards, and so many other regional awards. And he has always been working with young poets and his contemporaries, an academic who teaches college students, and is a very well-versed poet, both in Nepali and English. Besides being a creative writer, he is also a translator par excellence, and I learned from his translation, and I invite his translation. We have Madam Archana. Madam Archana is a metaphor of confidence. Wherever she is, there is confidence. Madam Archana, she is an independent scholar, writer, and founder, director of Akshar Creation, a publication house in Nepal. She has done a PhD from Tribhuvan University with a focus on gender studies and is a very acclaimed writer herself. We have read her works. She not only writes her own works, she also collects works of various disadvantaged groups or various areas, including men, women, children, and their first-hand experiences. Telling a Tale is a very acclaimed work she edited and published. Her story, Kathputala, is still in discussion. It became a buzzword in town. So I'm very, very proud and privileged to welcome, I had written on my Facebook status, some of the finest scholars of our time are the panelists this morning. So I'm really proud and thankful to the organizers for having us on board here. Let me set the tone for today's motion. Pandemics and the patterns of pain in literature. Before I ask Professor Subedi to take over and set the tone as the unimpaired keynote speaker in the first 10 or 12 minutes of this seminar, you see, pandemics are not new to us. Pandemics in written history go back to the Vedic times. Pandemics of one sort and another have always been mentioned throughout Eastern and Western literature. In the Western literature also, the history of pandemic, it disappears in the midst of history. 1200 BCE, influenza epidemic. 429 to 426 BCE, the plague of Athens. 412 BCE, another epidemic. So the Antonine plague, plague in London, the bubonic plague, the dark age, the plague in the dark, the Black Death. So there has been a list of pandemics, epidemics of such sort. Besides these, there also are natural calamities and catastrophes. So we, the humankind, we have always lived in the midst of epidemics. And if we express ourselves in literature, there is no room for literature to stay aloof from all these epidemics. In the East, as we say, even our Vedic literature envisions the shift of one yuga to another, from Satya Yuga to Treta to Dwapar to Kali, and in the junction, in the liminal space, there always is a catastrophe. There always is a pralay. One pralay gives way to another age. So if pralay is very much there in the shift of time and ages, we cannot do away with pralay. So if writing is whatever we live with, our writing is always informed by this sense of pandemic and pralay and this constant fear of death. So as students of literature and education, we know how pain has been theorized over history of literature and philosophy. So as a student of Professor Subedi, I should not talk on and become impertinent. So it will be very good on my part first to hand over the mic to Professor Subedi, and whatever he throws a light on, we shall build on that and we shall move on, and I shall be like grilling the other intellectual panelists, and we shall move on. Professor Subedi, over to you now.
Hello, good morning to everybody. It's so nice to see so many people whom I have not seen for months. I can see Mallika and Archana. We were together at Dhangari. Manu, I have not met and seen for so many months. And Mahesh, of course, I have been meeting you. And there may be so many others whom I cannot see. And Ramji asked me to say something, my ideas about the relationship between pain and literature. That is the topic I internalize. Pain and literature. Pain in literature as reflected in literature. And as Mahesh was saying, the tone basically is set on this question of the grand calamity and the its reflection in literature. That is the, I guess that's the theme. And I also asked Ramji to let me go after some minutes because I have to do one Zoom session, another Zoom session after a while with the students. So after saying a few words, take this opportunity, I would like to, I would apologize for leaving early. I think I should leave for the next Zoom session. The relationship between literature and pain is very interesting, complex, and challenging. The first question I just would like to ask myself and every one of us is there a direct reflection of the apocalypse? Pandemics is one of the representation of the apocalypse in literature, or is literature, representation is literature something slightly different? This is the question that people who write in literature, the poets and playwrights and fiction writers and others have been struggling for ages. So the first question is I just would like to take about some 10 minutes or so. The first question that literary writers and painters and poets have been addressing is this question of the size and the shape of the calamity and its impact on literature. I am a believer in the literature side, the power of literature. If one is not very careful about the impact of the calamity and the big events, one can easily get swamped. A writer can get swamped, and then the imaginaire takes a bigger shape, the gigantic shape, and then people start talking about the apocalypse. So as a student of Western and also Eastern literature, I just would like to mention just one point. For example, the concept of pain. Concept of pain in literature has a very, very human face. The concept of pain is very human and is always juxtaposed against the power of the big, the calamity, the grand, the big that has a kind of a big power. For example, starting with the Greek tragedy, the very basis, genesis of the Greek tragedy is that the power of the god or the blind forces or the pandemics or whatever, those who can cause calamities is very big. But the power of the human being who fights with it is very limited. So that is the very starting point of literature actually in the West. And also I'll come back to this also in our part of the world. The starting point of the pain in literature, it starts from this very human confidence that the tragic character fights against these blind forces we may call pandemics, we may call the forces of the apocalypse and so on, that comes through the whirlwind and so on. Even in the Bible, in the book of Job, Job fights against this very big, powerful God. So the basic spirit is to fight against these pandemics. How does the individual fight? Is with limited power. The individual knows he or she is going to die, cannot cope with these pandemics, this apocalypse, but nevertheless continues to fight with that. And ultimately the result is the character dies. So that very death is the message of literature. That death in literature, literary writers and poets who are sitting here, we all probably share this concept that the death of the character is not the defeat of the character. The death of the character in Greek tragedy says this is the fight against the blind forces, pandemic forces, for establishing the dignity of human being. So that is how we perceive this literature. In West Christian literature, for example, they talk about the wound, Christ as a wound. So including Kafka and so many others in later times, they carry this heritage of this concept of wound. But in our part of the world, in our mythology and so on, the wounded are the devils. The powerful, the gods, they inflict wounds on the devil, and those who receive the wound are the devil. So our literature doesn't carry the nuances of the concept of wound. Either it is taken as a concept of the big battle, that results into grand defeat or the grand war and fighting and so on. So this is one perception. The other perception of pain is that this constant warning to myself. I always try to warn myself. I think that if we go too much over to the concept of the pandemics, the grand, our power will be so limited. The power of the writers would be so limited that there would be very little nuances, small themes for the writers to write, because the power of the big is so all pervasive and impressive that it kills the individual initiative and the creative potentials of the individual. That is one aspect. But in literature, carrying a pain, writing about the pain should not be taken as the assertion statement of defeat. It is an assertion. In literature, pain is not a defeat. Pain is not the end. Pain is not the silence. Kafka all the time struggled with this concept of pain, but it placed the human being at the center, and then challenge the god, the powerful, that he could not easily compete with and then could not defeat. So this is one perception I want to say. The other point is that in our part of the world also, for example, the concept of pain is very pervasive. In literature, there is not, I don't have many examples as in the West, as Mahesh just said, kind of read a whole list of the literature caused by the pandemics and plague and apocalypse. But in our part of the world, maybe I don't have much information. There are, except for the Sadat Manto's stories, during the partition between India and Pakistan, some very brilliant literary works about pain were written. To me, Sadat Manto's stories are the best because he captures the pain caused by the partition. And also another example in South Asia are the plays written by friends in Bangladesh, because I visited Bangladesh since 1980, participating conference, and especially being a theater person, I keep going to the theaters. So the most important expression of pain in Bangladesh literature is expressed in the theater, in the plays, for example. So that is one example. These are some of the examples that I know I'm familiar with. And the Bangladeshi writers, every time, even today, they stage those plays about pain and how they suffer in the hands of the Pakistani military, and then the damage, the death caused by the military rule and so on. So these are some of the, and then Mahasweta Devi's stories. There's another writer who writes about pain. Mahasweta Devi's stories are very human. The power, as I said in the Greek tragedy, Mahasweta Devi writing embody that power, that pain, because though the power is huge, the social forces are very huge. They are despotic. They are very power centric, for example. But the characters, whether that is the Rudali or the breastfeeder and so on, very ordinary characters, they fight, they continue. That pain is juxtaposed against the bigger forces. So in literature, this is a subject of big discussion. I hope you will do. I wish I had time to listen to all the discussion. All I want to say by way of wrapping up is that in literature, when we are talking, bringing a big subject like the pandemic, like the apocalypse, we should be careful about one thing. That is, I should be careful. That is, I tell myself as a writer, as a playwright, and as a poet. Manu Manjil is there. He has written some very powerful poems on this subject. That we should be careful. We should be careful about this matter. That if the pandemics, the disaster, the apocalypse is huge, that causes the death of literature entirely. It sweeps away because the passion is very great. In Western literature, also Jack London, when he wrote this one Scarlet, the Scarlet Plague in 1912, for example, he depicted the character of the plague. And there are so many other literary works written in the West, especially during the Second World War. The Jewish writing, for example, they are the writings of pain. Hannah Arendt, she has tried to capture these dimensions of pain caused by the Second World War, anti-Semitic pain and so on. But in all the literary works written under different circumstances, whether they be in this part of the world or in the West, the most important thing that I have learned myself, we may have disagreements, but my personal learning is that I have learned is that literature, power of literature, lies in the fact that it can resist the power of the apocalypse. If we are not careful about resisting the power of the apocalypse, just like the Greek tragic characters did, just like the ordinary characters of Mahasweta Devi do, or the characters suffering by the separation in Sadat Manto's stories do, or as Hannah Arendt says, the pain itself is literature. In all this literature, the central theme is that however big the other side, the pandemics or the apocalypse or the war maybe, the power of literature lies in this very the power of literature lies in this very concept of resilience, the continuity, and creativity. This is all I can say at the moment, and I'll wait for some time and then try to listen to some of the conversation, and then in the sometime in the middle, I'll just like to excuse myself and go to attend another Zoom session with some students of the Central Department of English. With this, I just want to finish my observation. Mahesh, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Subedi. Thank you for enlightening us with the underlying nuance of this seminar, the pandemics and pain. And thank you indeed for mapping the Western literature with some of the Asian literature, like those of Sadat Manto and Mahasweta Devi, and reflecting on how a writer and a critic should look at pain, not as a fact, not as a scientific fact, but as a source of inspiration for creating something new and looking ahead. That was a very, very positive perspective of looking at pain, and thank you. Let me now address our participants and tell the game plan behind having other three different people from different academic backgrounds and trainings. See, we considered the different aspects of pain while inviting different people to talk on that. We have Manu Manjil here, a total poet. Manu Manjil, a poet. So he will be reflecting on how a poet looks at pain. Manu Manjil. And we have Dr. Mallika here. We want her to reflect on this pain from a sociologist perspective, from an economic perspective. I shall bring the questions there. And we have Dr. Archana. More than being a writer, she is an area writer. She loves to write from the perspective of the disadvantaged group. So when she speaks, she shall be putting light on how people in the disadvantaged group might love to look at pandemics and suffering and pain like that. But before move I on with direct questions, let me further set the tone of the core discussion beyond what Professor Subedi has said. The word pain has two aspects in my understanding: the physical, the scientific pain, a prick on some part of the body, from which the information reaches our nervous system, the dendrite, and it goes all the way to the thalamus of the brain, and the brain responds. So pain may be healed, it may be diagnosed. You may give a painkiller and it can be calmed. But the suffering is more a philosophical thing. It is more a subjective thing. It lasts on and on even after the pain ends. It also has a traumatic counterpart. It lingers and lingers. So that is not something measurable in a laboratory, that cannot be measured against a measuring rod. So suffering takes a philosophical tone, which I think is more interesting for people of literature like us. So that same thing has been written as Professor Subedi was saying, in a very long list of writings, like we can remember, Odyssey by Homer is deep down a literature of pain. Oedipus Rex, the series by Sophocles, is a treatise basically on pain. Shakespeare, so many plays, and to me personally fascinating is King Lear more than Hamlet. King Lear, the lingering of the pain and different aspects of family pain, personal pain, pain out of ego, pain out of vulnerability. When we see ourselves as vulnerable, the pain becomes most lasting, and we all become kings or Queen Lears for that matter. King Lear, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, to me, is a fictionalization of pain. James Joyce Ulysses. Or let's say Sylvia Plath, Madam Archana will be interested here. Sylvia Plath's Bell Jar looks at pain from a disadvantaged group's perspective. Or Cort's whole writing, Waiting for the Barbarian. Camus, Abhi sir was talking about the whole school of absurdists and existentialist writers. They all are they all are poets of pain. And I remember Camus and the plague there. And one very interesting thing is Thomas Main's trying to write the whole encyclopedia of pain. Nobody would imagine an encyclopedia of pain. There was a man, as insane as all of us, Thomas Main, imagining an encyclopedia of pain. And Margaret Atwood's writing of pain from environmental perspective, or W.S. Marvin from ecologist perspective. These all literature are there, and as Abhi said, some counterparts from East and West. I want to problematize one thing and pose this question to Manu Manjil. Let me first problematize this pain. To ask the writers, I mean the creative writers, two philosophical schools are very important when it comes to pain. The first I would call the Nietzschean school, Nietzsche's school of philosophizing pain. The pain, the physical pain is not that important. The pain of the feeling that all our struggles and efforts to live on, our struggles and efforts to live on are fundamentally null and void. It is absurd. This is one school, Nietzsche's school of the nihilist school, that it's all about pain and death and there's nothing at all. So why that? This is one point. Another point is the romantic school, who say that a creative artist, through what they call negative capability, through art and through creation of what is called sublime, you can negate this pain. And so poetry allows you the advantage to negate what is existent, to negate the pain, to forget the pain like Keats and Shelley, and to fly in the wings of imagination. So this negative capability is one thing. And the third thing is Theodor Adorno's negative theology, which says it is a bad idea on the part of the poet to hide, to beautify, or to euphemize pain. Write pain as ugly as possible, not like as beautiful a poem Manu Manjil writes as possible. So as poets, should we hide this pain as Keats or Shelley did and write something sublime, or we should follow Adorno's line of negative theology and write pain as vulgar? Is pain vulgar or is pain sublime, poet Manu Manjil?
Messi, very beautiful question. I think negating pain that the time brings is something like an ostrich hiding its head in the sand at the time when it is being hunted. By negating, we can't avoid it. Pain is there. Of course, we human beings sometimes are left without any alternative, any option, any other option, but to negate it. You know, the beauty and irony of literature, Messi, is that, of course, you know, you very clearly made a list of, you know, brought a list of times, okay, when, you know, we were ravaged by pandemic and other calamities. And the irony of literature is that it often comes out of a rubble and turmoil. You know, in plain times, in easy times, we don't see great literature coming. So it's a time of pain. It's a time of pandemic when we are awakened. Our awareness, becomes very sharp, and our emotions get intensified. And this intensified feeling is what we poets and writers write, and that does a great job for human good.
Thank you, Manu Manjil. That was a very very crispy and very tricky way of handling this, because we are caught between these two extremes. I want to move on to Madam Mallika. You see, I first view you as a sociologist. So from that praxis, I want to put this question to you. I read somewhere a book by Mueller-Lyer, and the book is Sociology of Suffering, where he argues that the entire business of sociology is to find ways to deal with suffering. Suffering is at the core of all sociological approach. But there also are people like McIver and Page who more believe in sociology as a science of interaction among people, of association and dissociation. So there is one school of association and dissociation, and there is another school of sociologists who look at the entire business of sociology as a treatment of suffering. So where do you as a sociologist look at yourself? Are you after McIver and Page with association and dissociation, or you are after Mueller-Lyer who says sociology is about suffering? So where do you look at yourself?
Mahesh, thank you for your question. But before that, I would like to thank Dr. Ramji for inviting me to be part of this panel. Because as somebody who lives on the other side of the border, it's always a pleasure to be invited from home, and very interesting thing about the pandemic times is earlier the border really mattered, the physicality of the border, and I had to get on the plane to join the discussions. But suddenly now, the borders have taken a completely new meanings. The threshold of our own household is the border for each of us. So suddenly I'm not that far compared to other people who are sitting in different parts of Kathmandu. So I'm really glad to be invited to be part of the panel. And listening to Abhi sir is always a joy. So it's an intellectual treat. I mean, I'm happy that you, identify me as a sociologist, because I've lived in a kind of identity crisis. Am I a sociologist? Am I an anthropologist? Am I an economist? Am I a poet? I'm not entirely sure. I don't think these boundaries don't matter that much, right? But there's been a really interesting food for thought on the table from Abhi sir and Manuji and yourself as well. Very, very rich discussion here about pain. And looking at it from the sociological point of view, I would say that the distinction that you've made of the personal and the public, or the physical and the emotional, or if in many ways, even personal, emotional, and civilizational. These categories are not definite. I mean, it's in the cusp of these categories that we derive the meanings of what pain is and what suffering is, right? And here, I mean, some of the really pertinent things that are kind of hovering in my mind is, in terms of where I am, I just moved home. So this is the day 2 that I'm living in this new home where I'm doing this webinar from. And I think this idea of where do you belong, where home is, that has really changed for really a whole class, whole intersectionality of people. And I think for sociology in the coming days and decades, that's going to be a very, very burning questions about how do we look at the loss of habitat. We are used to thinking about habitat in ecological point of view, but I think in the human economy or sociological point of view too, where is home? Where do you belong? I mean, the meaning of family, meaning of society has changed fundamentally. And the notion of public pain and the public discourse of pain, I think comes from there. So having written a book on the labor, now when I see the migrant labor, the pain and suffering of the whole kind of civilization of workers, not only in Nepal, in India, in all other parts of the world, suddenly they are not desired, they are not needed, there is no space for them in a normal human civilization. And the pain that comes from that is both personal and civilizational at the same time. And how do we theorize that? You know, I mean, having followed the workers, I mean, between 2001 and 2010, when there was no pandemic, I would say that even though the pain of these workers have become more visible now, the pain was not very different then. You know, every time the things didn't work out for the upper middle class or the bourgeois middle class, I mean, I don't think they have actually given any thought to the existentiality of the workers. You know, if they are not required, they can be just thrown away. I mean, their sense of belonging has never been rooted. And I think I have depicted the silent crisis of a much smaller number of garment workers who were thrown out of their factories, thrown out of the cities with absolutely no mercy. This was in 2001 and 2004. It was less visible. And now I feel that that plight has become a lot more visible because it has acquired a new scale and it has almost gone universal. But this kind of basic fundamental kind of relationship between the labor class and the classes all above their social strata, I mean, the kind of bitterness, ruthlessness, I don't think it's that different. You know, every time a human being is threatened by something, the instinct has been always to protect yourself, protect your family, and then only think about somebody else. And I think in the time of normality, we forget that because I mean, the threat to our person is not that severe. So we can, in some ways, dissociate ourselves from that sense of urgency or try to fight these little struggles on multiple fronts. But now that with the pandemic, I think what it has really shown to me as a sociologist is that when the threat is pertinent, then you actually don't give a hoot to anybody else. You protect yourself. And that from there comes the extreme unkindness of human civilization. And here, an individual is not capable of dealing with this pain that is pandemic pain. There has to be public policies or the public discourse that has to, generate. And for some reason, time, in terms of timeliness, it has not been possible. It has been a very difficult time in that sense. And in here, I think then we then suffer the death of our ideologies, our faith, our dignity, all these things that you mentioned. So maybe I'll stop here for now. And if there's a second round of questions, there are a few other aspects of the same kind of public discourse of pain that I touched on now. I'd like to elaborate a bit more on that, but only if there's time. Thanks, Mahesh. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mallika. So now over to Madam Archana. Madam Archana, see, the present pandemic has broken all the area walls. I said area walls, and mine is not a postmodernist definition like Dr. Ramji would love to do. The area walls, by area walls, I mean, look at the margin, look at the center, look at the rich, look at the poor, look at the children, look at the educated, look at the adults, and look at the so-called the most powerful country in the universe having the worst record of corona death and people that are affected. So the advantage of playing a say victim card by any disadvantaged group has collapsed. So look at this scenario. So do you think the discourse of areas are still pertinent, or you have to have a revised way of looking at who a woman is, who a man is, who a child is, who a powerful country is, or who a poor country is? Hasn't this pandemic taught us or forced us to think something against the areas and the worlds that we in literature and in sociology and anthropology tend to think from? What do you think?
Can you rephrase, Mahesh, to your question again, because the question was very long.
See,
so
we said men, women, rich, poor,
yes,
adult, children.
Yes. Yes.
But these dichotomies have been broken by the pandemic. The most powerful country in the world is worst affected. The most robust age group, the young people, the youths, have been most affected. The men folk are more in the list of dead ones, diseased ones, and the suffering ones than the female. So the chance of playing a victim card as a
Okay,
disadvantaged group.
I would object to this term playing victim card. I do not agree with the term playing victim card. There are victims who are suffering, and as earlier Manuji said that we woke up because of this pandemic. Being a woman, but coming from a privileged background, I would say that many are there who have not slept, not because of this pandemic. Their life, their existence is everyday struggle, and there is pain. So playing victim card it comes from a very privileged sector. The term I would not take that term. But if you quoted Nietzsche and you quoted Heidegger, but I would say if you take the whole scenario from Sartre's perspective, from existential perspective, then existence precedes essence. It means every human being has a right to live as a human being. Every human being is a subjective thinker. But in other times, when things are so-called normal, I would not call it normal, when people are not considered as human beings, those are also abnormal times. But if we take it as normal times, those subjects are erased. Their pains are not, they don't come in the surface, they don't emerge out. Like Mallika brought out the pains of the situations of migrant workers everywhere. Even women, today's news says that 53 women died because they did not get fundamental health care, the maternal health care. And there are a lot of women, lot of marginal community who suffer every day. And their life is a struggle for every day. And that struggle is a pain. So when we say that they play victim card or women play victim card, it sounds very absurd, because the pain of being a woman, the pain of being poor, the pain of being Dalit is the everyday reality. They don't need to wait for any pandemic to wake up from their existence. If a woman, if a young girl goes out in the street in so-called normal times, if she feels fear, there is a pain of her existence, her being a girl, her being a woman. Nowadays, we are hearing a lot of cases of domestic violence coming up. And where were those cases? In the developed countries, we never heard. We always thought that those domestic cases happened only in underdeveloped countries. But pandemic brought out those inequalities of gender, inequalities of race, inequalities of caste. Even I was just listening to previous discussion. There were a lot of metaphors of war and talwar, and pandemic is a war, and we are living in postmodern world. I think we are living in simultaneously pre-modern world, modern world, and maybe in some part of Kathmandu postmodern world. So it becomes very absurd to say that when we talk about postmodern, when there are people who do not get basic medicine, they don't have access to health, they don't have access to food. Now, I think I consider that more than pandemic and more than health crisis, I see the fear of starvation, because lockdown is not the solution. So playing a gender card, playing a class card is a reality, is not a card, is a reality. More than pandemic, people are suffering from starvation. There is a pain of starvation. So maybe we have to look at different levels of pandemics, politics of pain, whose pain is more important, whose pain gets in the media, whose pains are heard, and whose pain just are ignored, erased, or feels like they don't exist, like women's pain also, and marginal communities' pain. I could have go on, but I see we don't have much time, so maybe we'll wait for a second question.
Thank you, Dr. Archana. In fact, it was my design to provoke you to defend that way by mentioning of the card of the victims, and I also don't mean that, because the very word, the very pejorative, I would like to call it, forced you to come up with this confidence, which we all were waiting for. Thank you, Dr. Archana. I come back to Poet Manu Manjil. Poet Manu Manjil, see, many times, you see, much of the literature is the personal, the pain, the personal way of looking at pain, the personal pain the pain you feel, the pain I as an individual feel, with the smartness that I as a poet have the capability of explaining my personal pain is universal. This is the smartness of poets. But today, you see, whether or not I suffer from pandemic or corona, whether or not you personally suffer from corona or the pandemic, so we suffer, we have this empathetic belongingness with any victim in any part of the world that suffers. We don't even need to suffer ourselves. We empathize with the strangers. We empathize with people in Africa. We empathize with people in India. This empathetic connection has dismantled this wall of the personal and social. Who's personal, who's social? The pain is in a way brought us together. So the wall of this personal and social, they seem to be crumbling. So my question is, the wall between personal and social and local and international, these walls seem to be collapsed, at least viewed from the pandemic point of view. Do you think that the personal has suddenly become trivial? Because talking of my personal pain, what I felt yesterday, how I'm feeling today, has become like impertinent in the face of the global, over pervasive scenario of the global face of the pandemic. The personal is irrelevant.
Mahesh, I think this time of pandemic is a difficult time to many of us. It's embarrassing to thinkers, intellectuals, economists, governments, it's perplexing to many. And it's sad, okay, to those who are suffering, from this. And it's even funny, there are some capitalist entrepreneurs and others who are making, money out of it, and they're having a lot of fun, out of this. So I think, we have a sense of what Greeks call ignoramus. I don't know, is what is the, real feeling in me. Just imagine, Mahesh, a pair of young lovers who met just before the outbreak of the pandemic, corona pandemic, somewhere on the top of the hill, and before they were able to go on a second date, okay, on a date for a second time, they parted forever. Now maybe the beloved is somewhere in Italy, in the streets of Rome. Maybe the lover is somewhere, for personal reasons in the United States of America. Maybe in the most infected place like the American hotspot, like New York. Now look at their feeling. Okay, when you write down the feeling, okay, of these lovers who met for a time and could never meet again. Okay, if you are writing the story of so many other lovers, around the globe. Likewise, imagine a mother, okay, losing her plump baby, okay, who until yesterday was healthy as a little hell, and suddenly lost, okay, the baby, dying of infection, pulmonary infection. Now, if you write down the pain of this mother, okay, you are writing the pain of so many other mothers, around. Now, imagine that, or a singer, a train of songs, okay, coming from the singer, a train of verses coming from the poet, that also they also die along with the death of the poet and the singer. If you are writing, the story of them, you are writing the pain of so many human beings all over the world. So it's a collective. I see. It's at the same time personal and collective. Personal and collective at the same time. But one thing is that Archana ji rightly pointed out the pain that is already there among the Dalits and among the poor, and now at the time of this pandemic, okay, the lower class people like lawyers and professors, they are having indignity because they have got to live on municipal welfare and all. Okay, this also is part of the pain that this endemic has brought. But this crony capitalism is already there, causing a lot of pain. Capitalism has been something, a kind of religion you can't live with and you can't live without. So this capitalism, in the ancient past, people worked very hard to hunt and gather, to provide food, okay, for the daily. But now it's for greed that we are hunting and gathering. And this trend of capitalism really has caused suffering to millions and millions of people across the globe. And the way Dr. Archana said, okay, the pain among the poor is already there, okay, and it's a sense of indignity now. They were, of course, working very hard to survive. Their life had always been painful, but at least they had chance to work. Now they don't have, during this lockdown, they even don't have chance to work, and they have to live in sheer indignity. And this is another thing. So, we human beings have kind of a habit, habit ingrained in us, okay, habit shaped in the kind of need, kind of habit shaped in the wild. Like we human beings often look for wilderness, beautiful nature, okay, kind of wilderness where, okay, we, on holes, on holidays, okay, could go and enjoy. And these sites also are disappearing. This is another part of the game. So there are a lot many dimensions, okay, to this. And therefore, when a poet, of course, when he writes or she writes, the pain of a person, he or she is writing the pain of the people around the globe. Therefore, it is, collective and personal at the same time.
So
I don't know. Yeah.
In answering my question, you at least accepted the fact that the total personal has become irrelevant, and the personal is the social.
Yes.
The personal is the global.
Yes.
The personal is the universal. But
Yeah,
I have
because you are connected.
Yes, I have a supplementary question here. I want an answer from you right here, instead of waiting for another round. Sir, we all have read your poems. The metaphors, the baggage of metaphors, or the symbols we generally pick up from the beautiful flower, the bird, the nature, the Himalayas, the moon. I also have done that. You have talked on my poems also. We have done that. But writing a poem today on any theme for that matter, we cannot afford to choose a lari grass for a poem today as a metaphor of anything. A beautiful bird is a poem that we write today for anything. I read a wonderful poem you wrote on pandemics and corona and things like that. In whichever topic you write today, can we again pick up the metaphors from the same bag, that same objective, non-valued bag, or that same romantic bag, or has the entire language of poetry changed of late? The source of the metaphors, the way we organize terms, the way we organize language, has this pain and pandemic forced the poets to look for new poetics? What do you think about this?
To me, I pick up, metaphors, I pick up, materials, from nature. Really, I love, okay, doing this. And they are, done. I think what is done just for decorating, okay, my work of art. Nicely. It has, not any greater purpose. But what I feel even now, even in this changed context, we have still failed to understand nature. We have swum in the river without ever understanding the language of the river, and we have, enjoyed traversing through jungles and wilderness without ever understanding, even trying to understand them. We enjoy the shade and sound of the trees, okay, never understand that. If we human beings have been able, okay, to grasp the language of nature, I think that could have benefited, okay, us, more. And at times of crisis like these, pandemic moments, okay, nature could stand with us, okay, and we probably, okay, would be in a better position, okay, to face, okay, the crisis like this pandemic. But we have not done this. Therefore, choosing metaphors from nature, of course, it's a good thing for a poet, but this would not hamper the job of writing about universal things.
Thank you, sir. I now move on to Dr. Mallika Shakya. Dr. Mallika, I give you the advantage to continue with your theorization, which you wanted to do before. But then, before doing that, I would also like to put a direct question. See, in an ordinary condition, in a corona condition, let's take an Indian example. In corona condition, the administration says, stay at home, stay inside. This is one aspect. Stay home, stay inside is one aspect. There was a storm in Orissa, Bangladesh, and West Bengal recently. I think it killed some people and then it devastated some households. And there people said, stay out of home. In corona, people said, stay in. And in the storm, people said, stay out of home. So caught in stay in and stay out order, what do you think the people should do? Like take Bengal case as an example. What does your sociological insight say at such a situation when corona forces us to shut down and the storm forces us to go out of home? Because if you are in, all houses are not RCC buildings. They are not immune to storms and gales and tornadoes. They may fall, they may collapse and kill people. So people have to move out. But corona says, stay in. So in this caught between these two, like optionless options, what would a sociologist in you suggest?
Thank you, Mahesh. I mean, I'm happy that you gave me the liberty to go on with my earlier theorization, which is about the notion of home and belonging. And these questions that you have now more concrete, situational questions about what is home, whether you stay out of home, whether you stay inside the home. I mean, these all kind of provide a lot of food for thought. I mean, the dilemma of whether to stay in or stay out, it also reminds me of the dilemma that some children had during the earthquake in Nepal several years ago, that we all taught our children, duck under the tables and you'd be safe. And children who are playing outside, but happily in the sunny days, would have been safe outside because their teachers had taught them. So they went inside their homes and ducked under the desks and got buried under the debris, right? I mean, there are these extreme tragedies. And that's kind of one stark image that comes to my mind from your question. And the second image that comes to my mind is that these tribal villages in Chhattisgarh and in Jharkhand who had to self-isolate themselves after having come back from city, bringing back the pollution, now the corona pollution of city. They didn't go home. They walked hundreds of kilometers home. And when they arrived, they isolated themselves on a tree branches. They put up now that is really interesting images of people building these little net beds on the branches of the tree and sleeping the nights there for 14 days to protect their family. Because they cared so much about their home and who they considered their family. So this concepts of, who is home, what's family, this brings me to, what I was saying earlier about the pain of the migrant laborers, or the whole class of people who cannot protect themselves as well as people like you and I who can protect ourselves. So although the threat of corona is universal, it's actually not universal. There are layers of the exposure, right? I mean, here, you rightly shared with us that we live in public amnesia, which probably could be healing. So every time there's a crisis, human beings forget about it. And that's the only way to move on, get on with life. So there have been several epidemics in the past, every century, more frequently than the century. And although we now remember them now, suddenly we had forgotten them. And that's, I'm not saying it in a negative sense. That probably has been good for human beings, that we forgot about those sufferings and we moved on. And so coming back to that kind of chain of thinking, so I wanted to bring in, also Manuji mentioned capitalism, and capitalism is not a natural biological pandemic, but it's a similar upheaval in terms of civilization. And what somebody like Karl Polanyi had said about the emergence of capitalism between 16th, 17th, and 18th century, And he says that the civilizational meaning of poor had changed, or before capitalism, there wasn't this concept of a poor man. There was suffering out of natural disasters, the class-related hatred and deprivation is extreme. But this isolated one-man figure or one family that is poor, surrounded by everybody else who is not poor, who is isolated not only in terms of wealth, but also in terms of the moral standing. To say, and the capitalism basically said, if you are poor, it's because you are not working hard enough. That's why you are poor. So the king doesn't have the same kind of religious or spiritual or moral burden towards the people within his realm who are poor. Capitalism basically said it's not the state's fault. State give equal opportunity to everybody. And if you are poor, it's because either you are not intelligent enough or you are not working hard. And so you don't have anybody else to blame but yourself. So the isolation takes a new meaning. It takes us to a new level, right? And this is where capitalism begins. And then Polanyi says, the whole combination of the British law of, constructing boundaries and saying if a certain portion of land is mine, I can construct a wall and evict everybody out of it. Before that, even though the land is yours, you could not evict people out. People would still live on your land, work in your land, and belong to your land in a certain way. After the Bill of Enclosure, then suddenly, you evict them out of your land. The land becomes yours and not theirs. And so after that, these people could not stay on the village that they belonged to. They had to be forced into the cities and become this migrant labor, work in the factories where you do not know the factory owner. The factory owner does not know you. So the relationship between you and your employer is that of wage. And beyond that, there's nothing, no other relationship. So he says that the fictive commodities of land, labor, and money emerged. And out of that, this notion of a poor man who is completely isolated, morally, religiously, physically, economically, this emerged, and that became an acceptable part of human civilization. That is the tragedy of capitalism. And now we think about the second wave of isolation. So suddenly, I was talking about my home shift. I believed in a village raises your child kind of upbringing, and suddenly now it's not possible. A child only belongs to the four walls within which he or she lives in, and the only caregivers who can speak to you, who can nurture you, who can hug you, who can play with you, are this nuclear family now suddenly takes up a complete new and absolute meaning. And I think the implications of these we're about to see in the coming years, decades, and centuries even. And when you think about the nucleus family, and again, I'm reminded of somebody like Keith Hart, who said slavery was always evil, but it became more evil with the combination of the nuclear family. Earlier, the slaves and sons were not entirely different. You would not love your son just because he's a son. This emotionality of human relationship mattered, but only within a certain confines. So if a slave is useful to you in the material sense, then you would be obliged to be fair to your slave as much as your son. And all of those things got changed when this personal emotionality took over the social justice. And suddenly your son, your wife, your lover, this romanticization of personal and emotional love, that made slave the extreme annihilated kind of group. So then the slavery became the evil under the British capitalistic colonization that we saw. That wasn't the case before, right? And here, this is where I look into the evilness of home, that the moment you self-isolate yourself, you turn yourself off against the sufferings of everybody outside. And this is where the concept of apartheid comes in, that if you live in South Africa, you actually do not see the poor, because this is how the cities have been built. That because you don't see them, you don't feel for them, you don't understand their plights, you are afraid of them. This is where the fear of the other takes over, and then you become paranoid, and you become more and more you lose this human dignity for yourself and for others. I think sociologically speaking, there's a lot to kind of ponder about, and I think we are only beginning to see a complete paradigm shift in terms of human civilization. But having said that, if there's time, I'd like to make one point that kind of emerged in your conversation with Manuji about, is it still, sorry, my daughter is interrupting me. Okay, Manu, I have to, okay, just a second. Sorry about that.
Daughter, speak for a time.
Exactly, yeah. You know, now, okay, fine. She feels that she needs to contribute to this webinar. See, I was talking about, so the sociology of pain, the sociology of exclusion takes a complete public meaning, but it would be the biggest tragedy of our era if we let go of the personal that is not evil, the personal that is actually beautiful. You know, just to give an example, I mean, I was the warden of a hostel of my university where I was living until 4 days ago, and it became very, very difficult. And I think we got caught in this ideological battle of pro-Modi, anti-Modi kind of media debate, which is where a new rhetoric emerged about the liberal kind of attack of the forces that they considered illiberal or the right wing. So in this media depiction, the portrayal of the management of the university by people not considered liberal was attacked in the liberal newspapers, which is probably relevant. I mean, we all should stand up against dictators, right? But within that, there were some cases, a female girl student who had some difficulties. Her story got shared in the public media without her knowledge or consent by people who didn't even know her very well. So something so deep and personal about what happened to her when she was going home from university became kind of, you know, revolved into an ideological power game about, you know, the crying woman, the left out students, and a lot of these. I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is, so there's this ideological battle, and if we lost the relevance of, you know, a personal within those battles, then we all become the pawns. You know, we lose human dignity. We all become, either we are standing for them or the other side. And I think this extreme dichotomy or bifurcation of human existence, that has to be stopped. So I actually really see, and I'm really hoping that Manuji will continue to write about the, you know, the sublimeness of personal pain, of love, of tragedy, all of these things. The relevance of these must not, you know, be lost at any point. And I think if we lost the relevance of the extreme, you know, the depth of being human, being a mother, being a lover, being a friend, then I think we've really lost the battle without even having to fight for or against it.
Madam Mallika, we completely subscribes to your idea. That was a sociologist or economist way of looking at things, putting the patterns of earning, patterns of property division, and the imagination of house as a nuclear family, as an individual hub or a different thing. But then you see, what was social until today or yesterday? The word social per se, social per se, and what was economic per se, as we conventionally understood, on which sociology, anthropology, economics hinges, even politics hinges on conventional understanding of what was social and what was economic. But these very words, social and economic, they have been problematized by the current pandemic, and we can see that this is going to last for a very long time. So don't you think there is a theoretical need to force a paradigm shift? There is a need to look back at very definition, the way social has been imagined, the presumptions of what is social, at least the activity, the social activity, the social relationship, the social web, and economic activity, the economic web and relationship. So there seems a type of theoretical shift emerging. So what do you, as an academic predict in the new light, in the new way of looking at what is social and what is economic, what is liberal, and what is capitalist or not? So the theoretical is I want from you.
I'm a bit conscious about the shortage of time. I think the webinar is only for one.
Just give us a very direct reply. Do you envision a type of intellectual shift, a theoretical shift in the way social is defined or economic is defined?
sure. I mean, the pandemic is a huge rupture, and I think it's too early to talk about what the implications would be. We'll need years and maybe even several years to understand what has changed. So
that affirmation is the answer. I just wanted that affirmation, whether you agree that there has to be. So I want to come to Madam Archana, because I have done some injustice by allowing time to be very little with us. Madam Archana, one very interesting aspect of your literary work is that you say you are interested in the personal narratives of men, women, very young girls, pre-teens and teens and adult women and all. If I say the stimulus is the same, the pandemic is the same, the pain is the same, but the way they are perceived and responded to and reacted, they are different from gender to gender. If I say this, the way a woman looks at suffering, the way she responds to suffering, the way she handles suffering, and the way men handles suffering are different. If I say there is a difference, would you agree? This is my first direct question. And the second is, what is the pattern of pain you have seen in the type of eclectic literature, the personal narratives you have edited, published, and brought out? So what, as an editor, have you seen in the patterns of pain in the response from different age groups and gender groups? Madam Archana.
Thank you, Mahesh, for your question. I think my answer will relate to both of your questions in the same time. Yes, you have rightly pointed out that people of different gender reflect pain differently because of our socialization process, because women are brought up in a different social way. The gender understanding is that women can express their pain. Women are vulnerable, that's the understanding. Women are komal, they are soft, they are weak. So weaks, what do weaks do? They just cry. You know, they cry for help. It's not only the socialization, all the cultural texts that we see, that we produce, that we watch, from film, from song, from cartoons, from stories, from fictions, everything show that women is a weaker sex, men are the strong one, masculinity, that's what's called. Yesterday, in the first session, Dr. Indra Mishra was telling how pandemic is also gendered, like Miss Corona. Corona is some kind of evil, some kind of wicked thing, and that's feminine, that's not masculine. And also, I would like to relate to the language that media is picking up. Even we are doing it. When an infected person gets well and return home, we say, overcome this, fought this war. We are using a lot of, earlier you mentioned metaphors. Metaphors of war we are using in our writings, in our poems, in our blogs, like militarization, the military, the war, the warrior, we are the warrior, the swords, up front, the frontliners, these kind of words. And because we don't use humanitarian vocabularies, we are, as men, it's very difficult to express pain, because I'm working on a third collection of personal narration, which will have a lot of women, men, and also from marginal community. So they show their pain differently, where women easily express their pain. Men find ways, evasive words, metaphors to show their pain, or there's some kind of stigma to their pain. They cannot express it. They cannot say it loud. They have to keep on performing their masculinity, that they are brave. They are there to handle everything. They are not allowed to speak out, to show their tears, show their weaknesses, because we all are human, but they are not allowed. Whereas the sexually marginal community, they are silenced, they are kept invisible. They are not allowed to come out the way they want to come out. There's a fear of assault, attack, to control them as deviant gender. So you rightly point out that different gender are allowed or trained to express, to write, to show their pain. There are women who can easily...
Is that by training or like indoctrination that different genders respond to respond to these pandemics differently, or do you think there is something innately biological? Because if you
No,
see,
I don't believe innately biological.
like let me give you a counter question. Like there are more than around say 584 cases of corona positive in Nepal, and less than 100 are women, and more than like 400 are men. So don't you think there is also another aspect of looking at things from biological, from natural?
Yeah,
so what do you think is the reason why women are less and men are more to exposure?
I'm not a doctor. I am not well trained in medicine, so I cannot give the answer. But I'm sure that physiological difference may be the cause. Genes may be the cause. There may be other reasons, but not the way gender is described.
Or
not
maybe,
the way
maybe men folk are more exposed to outdoor activities, like they go out more, or they are more like crossing the borders and all. So doesn't that sometimes give an advantage, like you are more like safer, at least in the era of corona, being like exposed to less exposed to the external world?
means you are safer, you are not going out as a woman?
Yes, doesn't it give a type of advantage at times, like epidemics?
But
not a happy thing?
But this epidemic has proved that even women, they are not safe in homes. So how can we assume there is no safe place?
Because the men folks, they bring corona home and they transmit at home. So even home is not safe.
Home is not safe.
Miss Corona.
Manu sir, thank you. Be there now. We'll go to rapid fire type of question. Let's not elaborate because we are running out of time. Manu sir, many theorists think that best literature is written at the time of peace. Like to quote William J. Long, British literature, it reached its zenith during Shakespearean time because there was all peace and Queen Elizabeth was ruling like anything, and everywhere there was Santi. And at the time of war and crisis, the best literature is not possible. So is it really a time we have to be pessimistic about very good literature, or you have a different way of like derailing the whole discourse of like peace and good literature? If good literature can also come out of crisis. So where do you subscribe yourself? Where do you place yourself in this very thinking?
Mahesh, I don't have probably much time, okay, to talk about
yes,
this.
Yes, rapid fire question.
One thing is there that, I mean, I think, yes, literature is written, okay, even in times of peace, okay, is in the times of pandemic and war. But the durable literature, even you talked about Shakespeare, but, of course, he wrote in the times of peace, but look at the content, okay, of Shakespearean writing, okay, it's all about war and human pain, if you read, King Lear or, even Othello, this Macbeth, okay, it's all about war. So it's all about human pain.
So you mean,
therefore, even in times of peace, okay, these writers delve deep into themes of war and human pain. Therefore, of course, even in times of peace, poets and writers are in times of war and pain. Yeah, but one thing, I should like to note, in the past, people suffered at the hands of fate. Like we were talking about Sophocles, even Abhi sir, talked about Sophocles and others. We suffered at the hands of fate. We didn't know, okay, the other force, and we were completely blind, okay, to the other force we were suffering from. But now there are forces we know all about. This pandemic we know all about. This capitalism, okay, that is troubling us, we know all about. Consumerism we know all about. Okay, we are suffering from them. Okay, we are not in the situation of ignoramus. I don't know. We know, and still we suffer from them. So this is the kind of pain, new kind of pain, okay, to us.
So thank you. That means pandemic gives us issues. We have to wait for peaceful time to create sublime literature.
Of course, Mahesh, yes.
So
yes.
Dr. Mallika, this is a very direct and very question for a very rapid fire type of answer. You see, reading sociology right from the days of Auguste Comte through Durkheim to MacIver and Pace to Weber, right to our days to Amartya Sen and to Abhijit Banerjee, it's all about the human beings. Sociology's major issue, the substratum, the raw material is the human thing. But then pandemics like these, they force us to think from non-anthropocentric perspective, like looking from a planetary perspective, looking from the ecological perspective, looking from the trees and the plants and animals perspective. But this perspective is grossly missing in the entire sociological discourse. So, so don't you regret that this thing is lacking in the entire musing of sociology, being so anthropocentric and confined to the human? Where is the non-human part? So how would you defend to this allegation that I'm making to your entire discipline?
I think you are a bit confused about what sociology is, because it's a very confusing discipline. So sociology in India is not sociology in US or UK. Sociology in India is anthropology, as they would say in because of the colonial kind of discussions. Actually, the father of anthropology of India, I mean Srinivas, who was trained in Oxford, he decided when he came back home that he's now going to call his discipline sociology after the colonization. So that's right. The sociology is actually anthropology, and within there, I mean, I am not entirely sure that sociology and anthropology is as averse to the concerns of environmentalism as you are kind of considering. Maybe other disciplines that focuses on economic growth, on material expansion, or political expansion, they could be said to be insensitive to environmental concerns. But sociology and anthropology, I would say that is less of a kind of,
Thank you.
If you have one more minute, I mean, it might be useful to read Immanuel Kant, who has defined anthropology, which is what sociology is called in India, and by extension, I think also in Nepal in many ways. He would say that, human beings struggle to find multiple and increasingly more humane and efficient ways of cohabiting with the nature. That's what anthropology is. That's what he says. And by that definition, it's not averse to the concerns of environment.
Thanks to the elasticity of your discipline, I think, because sociology has been defined as the mother of all humanistic disciplines. So I really think some philosophical groundings to connect it with the environmental aspect, the ecology, will be discovered. At least Mallika Shakya will do that in the near future. Dr. Ramji, do I have times to allow participants to raise questions to the panelists? Because
5 to 7 minutes, let's allow.
Yeah, very few questions, sir.
So let's answer in an extempore way, direct question, direct answer. So we can take a few questions. Please raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Okay, Umeshji, please allow participants to unmute themselves.
Please unmute yourselves and ask your questions.
Yeah, please, we request participants to raise your hand so that we can figure it out, and then we'll go for the questions. Is that okay, sir?
Okay. Please raise the hand, then Umeshji will unmute you because we have muted everybody.
So I can see 2 persons have raised their hands. Bandana Limbu ma'am, you have raised your hand. So I'd like to request you to go with your questions, please. Bandana ma'am, are you there?
Okay, she's there. Please unmute her. Umeshji, unmute her.
क्लास लिएपछि एकदम छर्लङ्ग हुन्छ, एकदम लाइफको सस्टेनेबल, श्रीमती छोराछोरी सबैले राम्रो हुने खालको जागिरहरु हेर्नुपर्छ के बाबुआमालाई पनि। त्यही त खुल्ने हो कि नै देशको आर्थिक।
Okay, I have just muted him because I don't think he's
mute Ashish.
Bandana, please. I'm trying to unmute Bandana. Bandana, ma'am, you can unmute yourself, I guess. Umeshji, can she unmute?
Yeah.
She's muted, Bandana.
Yes, she can unmute herself now. Him, sir, please go ahead with your
Bandana, ma'am, please, you unmute.
Okay, thank you so much, Mahesh sir. My question is directly to Manu Manjil sir. So he was saying that we need to wait for the peaceful moment to write the great literature. So how not we how can't we, why not we can write the literature in even in such situation, if we hover to think about it from the peaceful moment. My question is like, if we think ourselves as we are in a peaceful moment, so can we write better literature or not? Thank you, sir.
Asking to Manu sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, Manu sir, please.
Can you hear me?
We are listening, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's a quite simple that even at times of war and pandemic, okay, you are at peace, you can feel peace deep down. Okay, there is nothing that bars you from writing within great literature. But my idea is simply this, that it needs a lot of focus, a lot of attention, and you are often disturbed, okay, in times of crisis. Therefore, and you are most of the time interacting with society, or most of the time you are reactive and you are without peace deep down. And at such moments, writing down great and good literature would be difficult. So you just if you even at this time of pandemic and social disquiet, okay, if you have the capacity to stay quiet and focus on what you are doing, of course you can do this. There are people doing it.
Okay, I think we better move next question.
Let's move on to next.
Kesab Upreti, sir. Please, you have raised your hand. Can you go forward with the question? You can unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. My question is to Archana, ma'am. Ma'am, do you hear me?
Yes, I do. Please go ahead.
Yes. Ma'am, you said regarding the issue of pain, gender is also one of the very prominent issue, right?
Yes.
But can the class, even in gender, be another issue? Because the people, especially the women in senior class, have different pain than those in the lower economic background, right? Even during this pandemic situation, I see many sophisticated families, women keep on posting this food and that food, that today a different taste and another different taste, and the things like that. And those from the very marginalized community are struggling for the food, even to complete or to survive their children and themselves. So isn't it the issue of socio-economic level also? Thank you.
You are very right, Kishavji. You have rightly pointed. That's why I said that not only gender, but class, caste, race, all the marginal community also, they also have their different kind of pain. And pandemic magnifies those inequalities. Now, in this time, we can see, that's why I also mentioned that starvation is the main problem. I think when we talk about the pandemic only, we are ignoring a lot of other aspects. A lot of migrant people, they are stranded at the borderline. They don't have any assurance to come back home. They don't have food. The policymakers, they haven't planned out how to bring them home. So there are a lot of problems. That's why I said not only gender. In these difficult times, we have to also keep in mind that class is also one of the major way to look at the inequality. And you also rightly point that when I don't want to be judgmental about people who are posting food on social media, who are dancing, who are making drinks, who are doing whatever they want to do. If you have to respect individual, but we have to be compassionate about those people who do not have any options left with them. They don't have any support. They don't have any help. That's why we have to be aware about them and do whatever little we can do. And this is the difficult time when we should be coming together. We should be helping each other. Because of the nature of the pandemic, we are isolated, we are locked down in the home, and we are unable to do anything. So we should do whatever we can do from our space, post help, provide help, or call out to people who can help. So you rightly point out to the point, which is very important to remember in this difficult time.
So I guess the host unmuted me. My question goes to
Umesh,
Mallika
yes,
ma'am.
please go on. Sudeep Umesh, yes.
My question goes to Mallika ma'am. The question is very straightforward. Ma'am, what is your anthropological, sociological take on this short-term memory of people towards pain, that their tendency to forget everything after everything's done and said? That's my question.
Thanks for your question. I think amnesia is healing. So, I mean, we put behind, I've been following the discourse, at least in Nepal, for a considerable time. And I've seen the rise and fall of the discourse on the Maoist civil war, for example. There was one time when every day we turn on the radio, watch the TV, and count the number of dead Nepalis killed on both sides. That was the epitome of public discourse. And that was not long time back. And I think now, if you ask the younger generation, but also the generation that went through the civil war, the discourse on that has really gone away. And I would say that there's something positive about Nepali society about this, that we are not living in the past of pain. We've moved on collectively. Now, that's the bright side of the public amnesia. And then the darker side of it is that, have we learned the lessons? Have we given enough time to reflect on the psychological pain that have been inflicted on each of us? As a society, have we we have forgotten, we've moved on, but have we healed so that the dark traces of that pain are no longer lingering in our psyches, So that's kind of one example. Again, we talk about the earthquake. That is another nationally a very, very painful moment, materially, of course, economically and sociologically, of course, but also aesthetically and emotionally, I think, especially for the diaspora like me, who connected with Nepal through a certain landmarks, collapses of those historic landmarks had very, very acute and profound pain in a sense of loss. And again, we've stopped talking about that. Now we're talking about pandemic, and now it's 2 months of lockdown. And I really see the discourse changing so rapidly about, first of all, we had to deal with the sudden notion of we cannot leave the home. And in the second wave, within a few weeks, it became clear that we're actually lucky that we are at home, because there are all vast, humanity who are not lucky enough to be at home. They are walking for miles and miles, hundreds of miles and kilometers to be home, deprived of the basic public transportation or the basic right to walk on the streets. And suddenly we realize that, we're actually lucky. And then comes the third wave of the fear now of the second wave of, how to economically restructure our economy. What happens to now these 6,000 Nepalis have been diagnosed of corona in the Middle East? What does it mean for a nation? What does it mean in terms of remittances, of employment, of keeping the economy going, of our savings, of retirement savings, the retirement of our parents? And these are national economic questions. And we are only beginning to talk about it now. Now, in 2 years' time, will the nation take this national pain into account when it is issuing public policies? It may not. These are the thoughts that I have in mind when thinking about pain sociologically, sir.
I want to add something to the question that I just put. As you have said, on the sociological level, it's very advantageous on people's side to forget everything that is said and done, especially when it is traumatic. But in terms of political preparedness and policy level, things, if this short-term memory goes on, if the memory does not persist, as it happens on a sociological level, as you said, isn't it bad, or doesn't it sound disadvantageous to the entire community?
That's exactly what I mean by the dark side of the public amnesia. The good side about healing is that it's good for human beings to forget about the past bitterness and move on as neighbors, as relatives, friends, or whatever, from the two sides of the ideology or two sides of the calamity. But when it comes to public policy, that's exactly what I was saying, that the record in Nepal is that we actually have the same public amnesia that is healing at the personal level and communal level being practiced at the bureaucratic level. So, as somebody who has followed the long saga of the death of a garment industry, by the time I was writing my book, which was about 8 years after the crisis actually happened, the public policy makers and then the political representatives of Nepal who should have been accountable for that calamity, they had completely forgotten about the crisis altogether. And because also their constituencies have forgotten about the crisis, there wasn't anybody to hold them accountable for their lack of action. And that, I would say that about the garment industry, and something very similar could have been said about the carpet industry, many other industries, many other non-industrial disasters. And my worry is that, that will not change overnight. Again, now I'm looking at the evacuation of the stranded nationals, and I've been working very closely with the governments of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and even Pakistan and Sri Lanka in evacuating the nationals during the pandemic time. And Nepal is really the only country in the region which has made absolutely no efforts whatsoever to even think about what is happening to its region outside the country. And this is not even about amnesia, this is the present, this is the current. Even then, there's a deep lack of accountability. And fast forward 2 years, I mean, very easily the government would shrug off its shoulders, and that's the tragedy of Nepali state, in my opinion.
So as the organizers have hinted, there's no time in our hand. We need to wind up. We have been here for more than 1 hour and 30 minutes, or even more than that, with pain and suffering and pandemics and all. So we apologize for being unable to take more questions from the participants. And my personal estimation is that it was a wonderful academic endeavor to be here, to be sharing ideas. I would like to thank Professor Subedi, who has probably left, for being with us as a guru, as a guiding light and a friend and a philosopher, and who really set the things in motion. Thank you, Professor Subedi. And thank Dr. Shakya joining us all the way from Delhi. And it was just like having you on board in a home seat here with us. Thank you, Dr. Mallika. Thank you, Dr. Archana, for being there and for being so candid and confident. And always thank you, Manu sir, with your everlasting smile and that optimism. And thank you all those participants who put their creative input and their questions, and who were very passionate and encouraging listeners. And I thank the organizers for having me here to organize all this debate and bring people together and engage you in this short discussion. Thank you, Ramji sir. Over to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mahesh Poudyal, sir, for your wonderful moderation. You really shared the mood of panel discussion with powerful background and triggering questions on pain in pandemic. So the crisis on human now is really overwhelming, and we know the pain seems to be invincible, but we are trying to find the solace in it. So it was very good. So now we express our deep gratitude and thankfulness to Professor Dr. Abhi Subedi, eminent poet Manu Manjil. Equal thanks goes to Madam Mallika Shakya and Madam Archana Thapa for your insightful and logical ideas. They really enlighten us, I believe. Thank you all. And now we are running out of time. So without much delay, I would like to move on to next, because before the panel discussion was started, we had missed 2 sessions, I mean 2 parts of the previous session. So I'm going to resume the previous session here. It has already been late, very sorry, but we will finish within 15 minutes to 20 minutes. Then thereafter, we will say goodbye to everyone. Now, before the panel discussion, Gunaraj Nepal had presented very his powerful, insightful presentation. So if participants still are willing to ask the questions, then I request them to be prepared with the questions. For that, raise your hands. But before that, we have one thing to be addressed here. I would like to request Usha Kiran Wagle here. If she is there, then I request her to come up with, put forward her reflection on Gunaraj sir's presentation. Madam, over to you. Madam Usha Kiran Wagle, are you there?
Umesh, find out, is she there or not?
If she is there, then fine. If not, then we'll move on to next.
Let me have a look, please.
Okay.
She's not there. She's not there. I don't think.
Fine. Then
okay, now question.
Now we are moving on to QA session based on Gunaraj Nepal's presentation. The title of the presentation was Nurturing Ecological Sensitivity Strategies for the Thinking Classroom.
Ramji, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Now okay.
No, okay.
Yeah. Gunaraj Nepal's presentation was based on the title Nurturing Ecological Sensitivity Strategies for the Thinking Classroom. If any questions are there from the participants, intellectual participants, then please come up with the questions for 5 minutes. Then we will move on to next. Raise your hands if you have any questions from there. It seems there are no more questions. It seems there are no more questions. So we are coming to the conclusion now. Before that, there is one reflection by NELTA President, Province number 1 President, NP Bhandari. I would like to request Mr. NP Bhandari to put forward his reflection. NP sir, are you getting us?
Umesh, please unmute, sir.
NP sir, over to you.
Okay.